Chapter 2083. The black fog let out a muffled groan, followed by a low scream. Then, it dissipated, revealing the black-clothed elder and Yuan Shitu. There were 3 wounds on Yuan Shitu's body that were bleeding profusely. Although the saber didn't really cut his body, the elder was still a little slower. The 3 saber energies had already severely injured Yuan Shitu. The 3 wounds exposed his internal organs. It could be clearly seen that Yuan Shitu's internal organs were already broken. With such injuries, he was definitely going to die. Bang! A small purple jade-like puppet in front of Yuan Shitu's chest suddenly shattered and fell to the ground, turning into powder. From the powder, a wisp of black light shot up into the sky. Yuan Shitu, who had been unconscious and on the verge of death, was no longer bleeding from his wounds. Even his pale face was gradually returning to normal. It's a substitute puppet. Lightning Snake's pupils shrank. Yun Tian also showed a surprised expression. He didn't expect that the joint attack of the 3 saber men could actually kill Yuan Shitu once. A substitute puppet, as the name suggested, was a heaven-defying treasure that could block a fatal injury for its master. A substitute puppet wouldn't be activated for a normal injury that wouldn't endanger one's life. Once the substitute puppet was activated, it proved that Yuan Shitu had already died once. Therefore, the substitute puppet would be activated and die for him. This was the greatest function of a substitute puppet. This function was really heaven-defying. The elder who came later was trembling all over. His face turned green and white. He had already blocked the 3 saber men, but he still couldn't block the saber energy that was full of death. This was already a great dereliction of duty. Little, you're so vicious. How dare you? The elder turned to look at Chu Yang, his eyes gloomy. It seemed that he was about to launch a desperate counterattack. Chu Yang stood up leisurely. He didn't even look at Yuan Shitu, let alone the elder. He said to Yun Tian casually, "Brother Yun, you came at the right time. Tomorrow night, Heavenly Armament Pavilion will hold a second auction. There are priceless treasures, legendary weapons, medicine that can bring the dead back to life, and some super treasures that you can't imagine. Please help me inform the various sects." Yun Tian and the elder were startled when they heard this. The elder was about to make a move, but he stopped. Chu Yang said lightly, "But Brother Yun, please inform everyone that Mo Yun Tian won't be part of this auction. If Mo Yun Tian is alone in the auction, this auction will be cancelled immediately." This. Yun Tian was startled. "Brother Chu, this matter, please reconsider." "There's no need to consider." Chu Yang's eyes shone with a cold light as he said coldly, "In addition, if Brother Yun's message isn't delivered, then Extreme Heaven's qualification will also be revoked. This is a permanent cancellation. Brother Yun, do you hear me?" Yun Tian was taken aback. He quickly smiled bitterly. "Brother Chu, I'm afraid you've misunderstood this little brother. Today's matter was truly unexpected." Little brother was also extremely shocked. "I hurried over to stop it, but I was still a step too late. It was greatly unexpected. Everything." Chu Yang smiled faintly and interrupted Yun Tian's explanation. His voice became even more elegant as he said, "Brother Yun, the word idiot is not engraved on my forehead, and neither is the word idiot on your forehead. You and I are well aware of what happened today. However, now is not the time for us to fall out with each other. So, if Brother Yun is smart enough, you should be more honest. Why waste those unnecessary spittle?" Yun Tian's face showed a trace of anger, but he shook his head and smiled bitterly. He naturally knew what Chu Yang meant. "I even dared to kill Yuan Shitu on the spot. Then, do you think I don't dare to kill Yun Tian? Since I've already been impulsive once, what's the harm in being impulsive a second time?" This sentence was obviously warning Yun Tian, "If you want to behave atrociously, I'll still accompany you. I'll accompany you to the end." After saying that, Chu Yang smiled faintly. He turned his head and looked at Yuan Shitu, who was still in a state of shock. He chuckled softly and slowly raised one hand. He pointed his index finger at Yuan Shitu's forehead and said clearly, "If you don't die today, your ancestors' graves will be spitting out smoke. Yuan Shitu, I'll kill you with my own hands in the future." Chu Yang's tone was cold, and his eyes flashed with crazy killing intent. His gaze was like lightning. Yuan Shitu's current cultivation was undoubtedly much higher than Chu Yang's. But at this moment, he didn't dare to look into Chu Yang's eyes. He was intimidated by Chu Yang's aura and could only turn his head to avoid the sharp edge. But when he realized that he was showing weakness, he hurriedly turned his head and wanted to retort. But he heard Chu Yang's cold laughter. The black-robed elder on the side said angrily, "Little one, you're so vicious and rampant. Our ghost hunter will never let you go." Chu Yang slowly turned around and looked at him indifferently. He sneered and said, "Now I'll say it in front of you. Your ghost hunter is just a fart in front of me. Do you dare to kill me? Do you dare to touch me?" The elder gritted his teeth, but he really didn't dare to move. Although Chu Yang almost killed Yuan Shitu just now, although Chu Yang clearly said that Mo Yuntian couldn't participate in the auction because of discrimination and humiliation, he really didn't dare to move. Because this auction was what all the super sects were looking forward to. They wouldn't allow anyone to destroy it. If he killed Chu Yang now, he would probably be besieged by all the big sect. And he would also have to face the full force of the Eastern Royal Heavens official forces. If it really reached that stage, the people of the Ghost Hunter would probably be annihilated here. He couldn't bear such a serious consequence no matter what. So he was so angry that he was about to explode, but he couldn't move at all. He didn't dare to move at all. Then, Chu Yang looked up to the sky and laughed coldly. He turned around and strode away without hesitation. A cold voice sounded and 2 words fell like ice beads, "See the guests out." Then, the 3 great swordsmen snorted and sheathed their swords at the same time. They looked at the 3 people coldly and left without saying a word. "This is too much." The elder who came later was furious. "He doesn't even put our ghost hunter in his eyes." Yun Tian looked at him with pity and said indifferently, "He doesn't even put our Sky Sword Alliance in his eyes, let alone your ghost hunter. What qualifications do you have for him to put you in his eyes?" The elder said angrily, "Are we just going to let this matter go like this?" Yun Tian said indifferently, "Unless you can represent your ghost hunter and also bear the risk of going against the other 8 big sect. Otherwise, before the auction ends, no one will allow anything to happen to Chu Yang. If you don't want to let it go like this, we can only let it go like this. Can you? Do you dare? So, everything will have to wait until the auction ends." Yun Tian turned around and left. "Remember, if you dare to do anything during this period, our extreme heavens will be the first to kill you all." Today's matter was very different from his original plan. But Yun Tian could only do so. Although there was suspicion of changing orders and it was inevitable that his credibility would be bad, for the long-term plan of thousands of years, Yun Tian knew better than anyone how to choose. "Yun Tian, wait a minute." Yuan Shutu finally caught his breath. Yun Tian slowly turned around. "What's the matter?" Yuan Shutu stared at him. "This Chu Yang, I'm afraid he's not as simple as just the shopkeeper of an auction house, right?" He finally felt that something was wrong. Yun Tian laughed and shook his head. "Does Brother Yuan think that Chu Yang is still the son of the great celestial emperor? Brother Yuan should have investigated Chu Yang's news clearly. Otherwise, I'm afraid you wouldn't have come today, right? Information is information." Yuan Shutu's eyes flickered with black light, and he looked a little ferocious. "Yun Tian, did you dig a hole for me?" A small auction house shopkeeper would definitely not have 3 celestial being level experts protecting him. Not to mention in a remote place like Xixia City. The moment the 3 great swordsmen appeared, Yuan Shutu instantly understood. But at that time, everything was too late. The hatred was already irreconcilable. Originally, he had thought that he had already given enough face by discussing with Chu Yang, a person from such a small place. As for women, weren't they just playthings? Handing over a plaything could curry favor with him, who was a super big shot to Chu Yang, why not? So, Yuan Shutu didn't have any scruples from the beginning. But he never thought that he would punch an iron plate full of barbs. If someone said that Yun Tian had never schemed against him, Yuan Shutu wouldn't believe it even if he died. Not to mention that Yun Tian's attitude had taken a 180-degree turn, which made Yuan Shutu even more convinced that he had been cheated by Yun Tian. "Dug a hole for you." Yun Tian smiled faintly. "Are you worthy?" He turned and left. His clothes fluttered, and he disappeared in the blink of an eye. Yun Tian, I'll remember you. From now on, you and I are irreconcilable. I, Yuan Shutu, will definitely repay you generously for today's matter. Yuan Shutu gritted his teeth. I'll wait for you. Yun Tian's voice came from the wind. From now on, the two young leaders completely broke off their relationship. Both of them knew that after this matter, the two super sects of heaven and earth would no longer have the chance to befriend. This Chu Yang is probably not very simple. The black-robed elder sighed. Could Chu Yang be the son of the great celestial emperor? This sentence was originally said by Yun Tian. Yuan Shutu repeated it at this moment, filled with a kind of ruthlessness. No matter who he is, when the soul-suppressing stone incident is over, I will take Chu Yang alive on the road. I want to play with his wife in front of him. Play with him for a generation. Let him see for a generation. Not to mention that Yuan Shutu's anger was soaring to the sky. He turned his anger into endless imagination, fantasizing about how to deal with Chu Yang and everything related to Chu Yang in the future. Chu Yang's anger was also soaring to the sky. This time, he was really angry. Although he knew that the two super sects of heaven and earth were definitely not people he could afford to offend, and also knew that the so-called mysterious expert entrusted the auction could only protect him for a while, Chu Yang couldn't care so much now. Chapter 2084. Chu Yang imagined the demeanor of this saint back then and couldn't help but be impressed. 1. Enchanted. If this saint was me, after being severed by the sword, the entire upper half of the mountain flew out just like that and landed on one side. It wasn't even intentional. Looking at the distance between the two mountains, the sword spirit's face twitched as he continued to narrate the shocking facts. Lord Swordmaster, you may not know this, but there's a huge difference between having an expert on a mountain and not having one. The sword spirit murmured. The hardness of this mountain back then was probably more than 1,000 times harder than it is now. Especially when facing an enemy, it should be even more terrifying. Chu Yang opened his mouth wide, and shuddered in fear. What kind of strength did he have to be able to do that? Could he really go to such a level? Those past events are too distant for us. Let's search the foot of the mountain first. Chu Yang took a breath and expelled all the shocked emotions in his heart. However, he already had an intuitive understanding in his heart. Damn it, the Shuelayahan that I scold every day is actually such a terrifying existence. Without comparison, I really can't tell. The two of them went along the way and saw that some parts of the mountain were already covered with grass and some shrubs. However, there wasn't anything special about it. On one side, there was a mountain path with white jade railings and green jade steps winding down. Chu Yang and the sword spirit went down the steps. They had just gone down 2 steps when the sword spirit suddenly trembled all over. Looking at the dense trees on both sides, he was in a daze for a while and murmured, Kanglan wood. The entire mountain is actually planted with Kanglan wood. Kanglan wood? What's that? Chu Yang asked curiously. 150,000 years ago, the Kanglan wood was an extremely rare type of wood. Speaking of which, there is nothing special about this type of wood, but its texture is extremely hard. Not to mention ordinary steel, even star steel may not be able to compare to the hardness of the Kanglan wood. Therefore, as long as the conditions permit, most people would use the Kanglan wood as the handle of their weapons. However, later on, everyone began to realize that although the azure wave wood was hard enough, it was easily corroded. Therefore, it was gradually eliminated. But very coincidentally, there was an unexpected discovery. The core of the azure wave wood was actually all purple. It was very dazzling and didn't decay as easily as the other parts. Because of this, the core of the azure wave wood was collected by various big worlds to be used as a material to make coins. However, later on, it was discovered that the core of the azure wave wood could be easily imitated. Therefore, star dream iron was added to make purple cloud coins and so on. The sword spirit took a deep breath. Lord Swordmaster, there's so much Kanglan wood here, and all of them are at least hundreds of thousands or even millions of years old. It's definitely a huge fortune. Chu Yang grinned, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. Big brother, wake up. Do you think that once this news gets out, I'll be able to occupy it? The sword spirit was stunned. He said dejectedly, yes, this stuff belongs to the government. No private person can occupy it. Chu Yang said calmly, that's why I didn't think about it. Otherwise, I'd be even more disappointed. Suddenly, he kicked a big tree and scolded, damn it, there's so much money in front of me. It's gone just like that. You clearly know that I am always short of money, yet you still come up with such a pile of things to ridicule me. Oh God, are you addicted to playing with me? Really? The sword spirit was stunned. You call this not being disappointed? Not taking it to heart? But that bastard Xue Leihan wants to take all these from me. No matter what, he has to give me some benefit. Otherwise, I'll cut them all with my sword. If I can't get any benefits, no one else can either. Chu Yang said fiercely. Suddenly, his eyes widened. Hey! What's that? How powerful was Chu Yang's kick? That azure wave wood under his feet shook violently. Suddenly, something fell from above and smashed onto the ground with a poof. Lingji. Looking at the thing that was originally snow-white and had broken into 8 pieces in front of him but had turned purplish-red, Chu Yang was dumbfounded. This works too. He couldn't help but look up. Are you an idiot? The sword spirit had already rushed over to pick up the Lingji. With a pained expression, he said, this is the snow jade purple heart Lingji that can only grow on azure wave wood. How can it be smashed just like that? This is the purest heavenly treasure, and it's even something that's hundreds of thousands of years old. You wastrel, you don't know anything. You're really going to piss me off. This can be considered a blessing in disguise. If the people of this sect were still around, how could such a snow jade purple heart Lingji be preserved until now? While complaining, the sword spirit also felt somewhat fortunate. Fortunately, this sect had been sealed. Otherwise, where could they find such a good thing in the current heavenly imperial court? Speaking of which, the sword spirit's complaint was completely without reason. It was purely a pity that such a good thing had been ruined. After all, Chu Yang didn't do it intentionally. Although young Master Chu didn't know anything and was inexperienced, he wasn't that kind of wastrel, wasn't he? But after this incident, Chu Yang became even more careful. His eyes were shining. It can't be that only one tree has this thing, right? There are so many here. There should be many more. There must be, there must be, there must be. He simply released the tribulation sword and let it search for it on its own. This would be incredible. Wow. There's another one. There's a super sealwood here. There's actually a red ginseng here. It's at least hundreds of thousands of years old. The exquisite blood ginseng here has actually produced ginseng essence. It's another snow jade purple heart Ganoderma. It seems to be even older than the previous one. Here, and here, they hadn't even walked 1/5 of the way down the mountain when the sword spirit stopped calling out. In the beginning, Chu Yang had been making a fuss about nothing. But he had become indifferent to it. Later on, he had become indifferent. Because there were really too many good things here. There were so many that they couldn't collect them all. If it weren't for the tribulation space supporting them, Chu Yang and the sword spirit would probably feel heartache. With just the two of them, they couldn't even collect the most precious things. This was a mountain that hadn't been visited by humans for at least 400,000 to 500,000 years. One could imagine how many good things could be produced here. As the saying goes, it was really innumerable. Moreover, this mountain wasn't a mountain in the ordinary sense. It was the heart mountain of the godly source realm, the place where super sects gathered. The abundance of spiritual chi had long reached an appalling level. It was undoubtedly easier for treasures to be produced on such a mountain. Chu Yang kept throwing things into the tribulation space. The 3 medicine spirits inside happily transplanted them. Only ginseng was given special treatment. No matter if it was blood ginseng, jade ginseng, ordinary ginseng, or exquisite ginseng and so on, dozens of each kind of ginseng were collected. The 3 medicine spirits had to first absorb a certain amount of essence from each ginseng. After confirming that there was at least a portion of essence in all the ginseng in the tribulation space, the rest were directly devoured by the 3 medicine spirits without any hesitation. In other words, A huge portion of ginseng that was harvested this time turned into dried radishes in the blink of an eye. At the beginning, the speed of devouring was still somewhat slow. But later on, as the medicine spirit's abilities continued to evolve, they could devour anything in the blink of an eye. Of course, although the medicine spirits were eating happily and contentedly, there were some things that they didn't know. All the elixirs that had been selected by the Tribulation Sword had actually already been absorbed by the Tribulation Sword in advance. In addition, the Tribulation Sword had another great advantage: it wasn't picky about its food. For example, when it encountered a large bunch of ginseng, the Tribulation Sword would even suck up all the ginseng that had just sprouted for 1 or 2 years. Wherever the Tribulation Sword passed, not even a blade of grass was left. No medicine was left behind. Because those that couldn't be taken away, or those that were disdained to be taken away, were all directly sucked dry. Heavenly treasures instantly turned into withered grass. So it wasn't that not even a blade of grass was left behind. It was more appropriate to describe it as withered grass everywhere it passed. Swoosh swoosh swoosh, swoosh swoosh swoosh. The Tribulation Sword was in high spirits, and the 3 medicine spirits were overjoyed. But the Sword Spirit and Chu Yang were already somewhat dispirited. Sometimes, when there were too many good things, bending down to pick them up too many times seemed to be a kind of trouble. So tiring. Later on, Minister Chu, who felt tired, directly went down the mountain, leaving the Sword Spirit and the Tribulation Sword to search for elixirs. The Tribulation Sword was responsible for discovering, devouring, and digging, while the Sword Spirit was responsible for transporting the elixirs into the tribulation space. The 3 medicine spirits waited for the elixirs to come in, and chose to devour, absorb, and transplant them. The 3 sides each had their own duties, and later on, it was somewhat mechanized. No matter how small a mountain was, it was still a mountain. Moreover, how small could a mountain that could be chosen as the core of a super sect's headquarters be? Even with the Sword Spirit and the Tribulation Sword, 2 heaven-defying existences that were beyond human understanding, plundering at an incredible speed, it actually took more than an hour to clean up half of the mountain. If people were allowed to come in at this time, they would probably be so shocked that their eyeballs would pop out. This was too fucking clean. The world-famous realm of God Source, where the soul-suppressing stone was located, didn't even have a single elixir after the seal was opened. There wasn't even any common herbs. There was only withered grass in sight. What the fuck was this? This was simply a miracle. Of course, they still couldn't come in, but Chu Yang, who had already come in, had really discovered a miracle. Isn't this a sect? Wasn't it already destroyed? Where are the people? Even if there's no one, there should be corpses, right? Where did they all go? Didn't they say that there was a divine soul of a tribulation below? Where is the divine soul of a tribulation? Where did it go? Why didn't I encounter anything? Chu Yang was very puzzled about this. The Sword Spirit also seemed to be puzzled. This was completely incomprehensible. But it was lucky that they didn't encounter anything. If they really did, it would be fatal. Chapter 2085. There were hundreds of cultivators' cave residences on the half of the mountain that served as the foundation. There were pills, secret manuals, weapons, spirit herbs, or rare metals in the cultivation dojo. Chu Yang accepted all of them without hesitation. Since he was already here, he would naturally accept whatever he could. He only left behind some very low-level stuff that the Sword Spirit had appraised. He couldn't possibly leave nothing behind when he let people in after a few days, right? That would be too obvious. If they suspected that someone had beaten them to it, there would always be trouble in the future. It's here. The Sword Spirit cried out in surprise. The 2 of them finally found the answer to the strange matter just now as they walked towards the mountain top. At a certain corner, there was a valley densely packed with corpses. Every bone was sparkling and shiny. The skeletons were as big as mountains. Chu Yang sucked in a breath of cold air. The corpses piled up in this valley were probably no less than tens of thousands of people. Chu Yang gently walked over, and casually turned over one of the corpses. He turned it over with a crashing sound. Some places automatically turned into white ashes after he turned it over. But a few thigh bones, arm bones, and so on, as well as the skull, were still intact. They had all turned into a kind of texture that seemed to be stone or jade. Obviously, this part of the bones had turned into fossils. Among them, there were many bones that still had their original texture. These were the bones of experts who had reached the heavenly human level when they were alive. Even after hundreds of thousands of years had passed, their bones could still maintain their original texture. But they could no longer recover their vitality. The fatal injuries of these people are actually the same. Chu Yang looked at the bones on the ground, his eyes revealing a look of sincere horror. They were all stabbed in the chest by a sword. I'm afraid it wasn't just a sword. It was sword energy. The sword spirit corrected him. When the sword energy entered the body, it had already shattered the original soul of the person who was attacked. Then, it cut off their vitality. The person who did this is extremely vicious and merciless. He didn't even give them a chance to dissipate their souls. He directly destroyed them completely. With so many people piled up here, the person who did it only used 3 swords at most. The sword chi that was brought up should have the ability to chase after life and lock the soul, killing all of them. After all, the sword spirit had followed Xue Leihan for many years. He more or less had a certain understanding of people of Xue Leihan's level. At this moment, his voice was very heavy as he said, judging from the signs here, even if the cultivation of the person who did this isn't as high as yours, I'm afraid it's not that far off. Chu Yang nodded to show that he understood. The calamity sword whistled out and began to plunder and collect spiritual herbs in the valley. Because there were too many experts who had died here, and their cultivations when they were alive had turned into spiritual qi, the quality of the spiritual herbs growing in the vicinity was also extremely high. However, Chu Yang had always felt that such elixirs were somewhat disgusting. Therefore, he had opened up a separate medicinal field for himself. He had also made up his mind that he and his family would not touch the elixirs produced in this field. In the middle of the 10,000 corpses, a dark flower stood in the wind, constantly emitting wisps of black qi. That's the ghost flower, the sword spirit sighed. Only under the premise that many people have died, and under the premise that these dead people's original cultivations are very high, will there be a chance for such a strange flower to appear. I really didn't expect that there would be one here, and that it would grow like a big tree. Ghost flower. The conditions for this flower to appear are so harsh. It must be of great use, right? Chu Yang asked. That's hard to say. I've only heard that the ghost flower can connect the 2 realms of yin and yang, but I don't know its specific use, the sword spirit said. As he spoke, he looked at the ghost flower with some excitement and muttered, I wonder if there's this and that. This? That? Chu Yang was startled. What's this and that? The sword spirit looked at it for a while and reached out to touch it. Finally, he shook his head in disappointment. Looks like there shouldn't be. Keep them all. This thing should be useful in the future. Even if it's useless, don't leave it here and let others take advantage of it. Okay. Chu Yang waved his hand and was about to put it away when the black fog above the ghost flower suddenly transformed into a clear human face. It bared its teeth and rushed towards Chu Yang. Chu Yang was startled when he saw this. He was about to use his palm to disperse or force back that strange face. But, the sword spirit had already rushed forward excitedly. So there really is one. I almost misjudged it. Leave it to me. This thing is a great supplement for me. Then, the sword spirit suddenly flashed high in the sky and transformed into a black phoenix. It opened its big mouth. It spouted out pitch-black ink-colored flames. And, it rushed towards the monster in front of it. That monster was caught off guard and its reaction was somewhat slow. It was instantly hit by the black flames of the sword spirit. Chu Yang thought that the 2 of them would have to fight for a long time. But, he didn't expect that the monster would let out a hoarse scream as soon as the black flames touched it. Then, it turned around and tried to escape. Chu Yang heard this scream, and suddenly had a negative feeling that his spirit was shaken. The phoenix that the sword spirit had transformed into chased after the monster relentlessly. Along the way, the black flames seemed to be free of charge. Every time it burned the monster's body, it would evaporate into a pitch-black mist. The black fog would be quickly absorbed by the sword spirit as soon as it appeared. Then, the size of the sword spirit's phoenix would increase significantly. The black flames lingering around the phoenix's body also became more intense and more gorgeous as the black fog was absorbed. That monster didn't have the strength to fight back. Even when it tried to escape, it could only run back and forth around the ghost flower. It seemed that it couldn't get too far away from the ghost flower. This situation naturally made it easier for the sword spirit to chase and intercept it. Later on, the monster let out a pitiful cry, as if it was begging for mercy. However, the phoenix transformed from the sword spirit did not show any mercy. It continued to pounce on the monster ferociously, turning it into a pitch-black fog with a mouthful of flames. Then, it spread its wings and instantly doubled in size. Whoosh! The sword spirit returned to his human form and landed on the ground. He had a satisfied look on his face. He was beaming with joy, and looked like a cat that had just stolen a fish. He looked lazy and a little lustful. "What the hell is this thing?" Chu Yang asked. "Look at your vulgar appearance after eating it. It's really annoying. You don't know shit." The sword spirit was immensely proud of himself. "This thing is useless to living people like you. In fact, it will only harm you if you come into contact with it. But, to a soul like me, it has the same astonishing effect as if you had eaten a miracle medicine. This thing is called the 10,000 Souls spiritual body. If it weren't for the deaths of so many experts in this place, the resentment of hundreds of thousands of years would have condensed to form such a good thing. I didn't expect to have such an unexpected harvest this time. I've really struck it rich. Hurry up and tell me what's the effect of eating this thing," Chu Yang said as he put away the ghost flower. "To put it simply, I can reconstruct my body and be reborn if I encounter a suitable opportunity after eating this." The sword spirit looked up to the sky and shouted, "I've been waiting for this day for 130,000 years." Chu Yang didn't know what was going on. He clicked his tongue and said disdainfully, "Isn't it just a chance to live under the sun again? Look at how excited you are. I live under the sun every day, but I'm not as excited as you are." The sword spirit was completely speechless. "How can I be the same as you? Aren't you afraid of being punished by the heavens for saying such words?" "That's right. Where did that calamity divine soul you mentioned go? We've been here for a long time. How come we haven't seen even a shadow of that guy?" Chu Yang frowned. He looked at the top half of the mountain peak, and muttered, "That place with golden light and purple energy should be the headquarters of that super sect." The sword spirit nodded. "It should be. But, it seems a little strange. We have been here for a long time, it's impossible for us to be here until now. Why hasn't the soul of calamity appeared yet? He is the most sensitive to the aura of living beings. Bah, why do I have the same idea as you, idiot? It's our luck that we didn't encounter the soul of calamity, but if we do, we won't be able to leave." Just then, a hoarse laughter suddenly came from behind the two of them. Rather than a laugh, it was more like a weird sound made by bones that made one's teeth ache. A gloomy voice that seemed to be floating in the clouds said, "I've always been here. It's just that you haven't noticed. The reason why I haven't appeared is because I've been waiting for you to come here. You also know that you won't be able to leave after encountering me. It's just as you thought. Since you've come, don't think about leaving." Suddenly, the voice changed into a strange laughter. "It's actually a living person and a soul body. Excellent, excellent. Just in time to save me all the trouble." The sword spirit's face changed dramatically. He exclaimed, "It's actually a peak divine soul that has complete consciousness and can communicate with any living creature. We're dead." Chu Yang's face also changed dramatically. When he turned around, he realized that everything he had seen along the way had all disappeared. Even the entire sky was filled with a dark and cold aura of death. Crack, crack, crack. One by one, zombies, with ghostly fire flickering in their eyes, stepped out of this boundless darkness. These zombies were all naked. The muscles on their bodies seemed to have congealed on their bodies. They didn't decay like the other corpses. Some of them were even wearing clothes. Some were holding long swords, some were holding long sabers, some were holding whips, some were holding daggers, and some were carrying a big stick made of unknown metal. And all the zombies had one thing in common: their faces were all ashen. If it weren't for the ghostly fire flickering in their eyes and the big bloody holes in their throats that were constantly being torn open by the sword wounds, Chu Yang would almost have suspected that these people were all alive. Chapter 2086. Lord Sword Master. The sword spirit was so nervous that he almost stuttered. This is really bad. This is a zombie puppet cultivated after the tribulation godly soul devoured everyone's dissipated original souls. One of the prerequisites to make this kind of zombie puppet is that the cultivation of these puppets must be at least heavenly human level experts when they were alive. This is really troublesome. This is actually the location of a super sect that is not inferior to the current Ling Xiao faction. Chu Yang's expression became infinitely calm. He said coldly, "Whether it's bad or not, we will know in a while. What's the use of panicking now?" The more dangerous the moment, the calmer Chu Yang's mind was. Chu Yang's eyes turned. He had already judged the current situation. Without a doubt, there was no chance of winning. Chu Yang and the sword spirit would have died a violent death in less than a round if they had fought normally. In all directions, there were a total of 7 zombies walking over mechanically. They slowly raised the weapons in their hands. There was a sharp whistling sound in the air again. A cloud of grey smoke swept past with a whoosh sound. The dense smoke twisted in the air, and the image of a thin old man in a long robe with a long beard fluttering in the wind slowly appeared. This old man who suddenly appeared was dressed like the people outside. He stood in the air with his hands behind his back. He looked at Chu Yang and the sword spirit with a pair of cold eyes. There was actually a kind of cold and excited expression in his eyes. The sword spirit trembled. He was really scared. He didn't expect to encounter such a desperate situation when he just got the opportunity to become a human again. Could it be that his idea of becoming a human again was against the heavens and the heavens didn't allow it? He didn't expect that this tribulation godly soul was actually a powerful one that had never appeared in history. It had reached the point where it was very human-like. Its cultivation was as if it was alive, and its wisdom was as complete as a living person. This kind of tribulation godly soul was completely capable of fighting against super experts at the saint level. Although its strength was only equivalent to a primary saint, it was already close to a supreme existence in the Heaven Imperial Court. It even had an extra ability compared to a saint in the general sense. It was an almost indestructible soul that couldn't be killed, smashed, or destroyed. It couldn't be hurt at all, nor could it feel pain. Even if its body was completely smashed into pieces, it could be reassembled in the next moment. Moreover, its power was not reduced in the slightest. This was definitely a divine soul calamity that would give even a saint stage expert a headache. If the myriad soul's soul body was a great tonic for the sword spirit, then the sword spirit was also the best tonic for this incomparably powerful divine soul in front of her. The sword spirit and Chu Yang had no power to fight back in front of such an existence. The Calamity Sword Master and Calamity Sword Spirit were already at death's door. How could they avoid death and prolong life? This was not the end of the crisis. The sword spirit and Chu Yang discovered something else almost at the same time. The moment the divine soul of the calamity appeared, they felt a strong restriction. Yes, it was a restriction, not a suppression. If it was a pure suppression, then it would be a specific suppression caused by the other's cultivation, aura, and other aspects. However, the current situation was completely different. His body could still move freely, but it could only move within a radius of 3 feet around his body. His divine sense and internal breath could operate on their own, but they could not extend beyond the radius of 3 feet. But if he wanted to go out, it was completely impossible for his body, divine sense, and internal breath. Even if he wanted to go back to the space of calamity, he could not do so. Judging from this situation, it seemed that the entire space here had been sealed. The sword spirit's face changed dramatically. This time, they were really in trouble. Chu Yang's face also changed a little. He could not even return to the space of calamity. His biggest trump card could not be used directly. This matter was really serious. But he immediately calmed down. In such a vile situation where he was the meat on the chopping board, what was the use of panicking? The more panicked he was, the faster he might die. Even if he really entered the netherworld, it was better to be calm. In other words, this was the legendary dying to save face. But could it really be done like this? How many people in the world would die to save face? Even if they died, they would die in a carefree manner. Why didn't he just kill me directly? Chu Yang thought quickly. Could it be that he wants to know something? This was the most reliable inference Chu Yang could think of. Or, he has not seen a living person here for too long and is very lonely. Another unreliable, but barely plausible, inference. Or, is there any other reason? It should be like this. If it were me, I would have collapsed long ago if I stayed in a place where I could not get out for hundreds of thousands of years. Loneliness and solitude were the greatest enemies of mankind. Even the divine spirit of the calamity was not exempt from this. Countless thoughts flashed through Chu Yang's mind, but his face remained calm. Since he did not die immediately, there was still a chance. Although the chance in front of him was very slim, it was still a chance. The crisis might not necessarily be unable to turn into a turning point. As long as the other party had some motive, he might have a chance of survival. The calamity soul that had suddenly floated out waved its hand, and the advancing zombies and puppets immediately stopped in their tracks. They stood there mechanically, motionless, as if they were made of wood and clay. Then, the divine spirit of the calamity walked down from the sky step by step with his hands behind his back. He wore a long robe, and his long beard fluttered in the wind. His face was thin, and his spirit was hale and hearty. This demeanor, this bearing, this was clearly that of a peerless expert, a peerless genius. But from the situation in front of him, no matter how one looked at it, this was clearly a living person. However, this living person was clearly just formed by the smoke. This series of transformations was completed in front of Chu Yang and the sword spirit. Chu Yang's psychological quality was indeed very strong. He could still maintain a calm expression at this time, and even smiled and cupped his fists in greeting. "Senior, we have a great destiny to meet today." The divine spirit of the calamity looked at Chu Yang, and unexpectedly smiled like spring water. He nodded slightly and said, yes, you are right. You and I are indeed fated. This old man has been trapped here for hundreds of thousands of years, and now I have finally seen you alive. If this is not a great destiny, then what is it? The divine spirit of the calamity spoke in a somewhat gloomy and dry voice at the beginning, and even stuttered a little. But after a few sentences, the gloominess in his voice was removed, and he became fluent. This was probably because he had rarely spoken in hundreds of thousands of years. No matter who it was, they would be very lucky if they didn't become mute after hundreds of thousands of years. It was extremely rare and precious to be able to speak like this divine spirit of the calamity. Moreover, the voice of this divine spirit of the calamity became calmer and more amiable, and even more mysterious. At the same time, the shock in Chu Yang and the sword spirit's hearts was even more intense. This person's strength is really terrifying. I really don't know what level he has reached. However, Chu Yang felt more at ease about this change. It doesn't matter even if the strength of this divine spirit of the calamity is stronger than expected. His strength has long exceeded the scope of what I can resist. So, what does it matter if he is a little stronger? On the contrary, he has already created an opportunity for me to turn the situation around by talking to me in such a pleasant manner. The divine spirit of the calamity casually pointed at him, and the sword spirit only felt that there was another layer of imprisonment on him. He couldn't even speak, and could only stand there in a daze. Let's have a good chat now. This little soul is more or less a hindrance here. If it wasn't for the fact that I need to devour his soul, I would have killed him right now. The divine spirit of the calamity smiled faintly, and his voice was clear and elegant. This junior is very honored to have Elder invite me. Chu Yang laughed. To have the opportunity to have a good chat with Elder is a great opportunity that only comes once in hundreds of thousands of years. There are countless people in the world, and only I can have this kind of fate. Of course, you should feel honored because you have such a heaven-sent opportunity to give your body to me. Your body will be able to shake the world and become a mighty being in the world. You will be able to live forever. How can I not feel honored? The divine spirit of the calamity said somewhat mockingly. Chu Yang said politely, "So this is Elder's plan? I naturally feel honored to be able to give my body to Elder. But, may I ask, if I give my body to Elder, how should I give it to you? And after I give it to you, where should I place my soul? I believe that if I give my body to Elder, Elder won't treat me unfairly, right?" The tribulation divine soul chuckled. "Little one, you're quite bold. You're quite whimsical. At this juncture, you actually dare to bicker with this old man and even bargain with me." Chu Yang laughed. "Daring? Of course, bargaining will lead to death, but don't you think you won't die if you kneel and beg for mercy? Since I can't escape no matter what, I might as well fight. If I can get a few words out of you, it's also a bargain. In front of Elder, getting a few words out of you is probably the limit of what I can do." "Good. Well said." The divine spirit of the calamity revealed a look of appreciation. "You are so young. It's rare for you to be so tough. When I devour your soul, I will let you suffer less. I might as well give you a quick death. But in the end, your soul will still be destroyed and you will never be able to recover. Elder can still think for me at such a juncture. This is really rare." Chu Yang said with inexplicable gratitude, "Elder must have been a good person when you were alive. Others wanted to consign him to eternal damnation, and he actually praised them as a good person." Chapter 2087. I thought that Senior had a whole new level of respect for me long ago. Speaking of which, I'm a bit careless. They all say that I'm different from others. It's Senior's luck to meet me. However, since the situation has reached such a stage, can I be more honored? Chu Yang smiled amiably. The sword spirit was truly in awe of Chu Yang. Chu Yang was already at such a stage of certain death, but he could still talk cheerfully and wittily. Even his expression didn't change at all. Could it be that his nerves were made of iron? No, even if they were made of iron, they would have melted at this point. The divine soul tilted his head and looked at him with interest. "This little one is really interesting. Since I'm about to be devoured, and my divine soul will be destroyed, and I'll be consigned to eternal damnation, may I have the honor of knowing Senior's name?" Chu Yang smiled politely. "May I know Senior's name? Even if I die, I'll be a ghost who knows. I believe Senior won't refuse to grant such a small wish. Haha, little one, do you know what it means to have your divine soul destroyed? You actually want to be a ghost? Do you think you still have a chance to be a ghost?" The divine soul laughed and mocked him. Obviously, he was at a disadvantage in the previous bickering and was unwilling to accept it. Now that he had a chance, he immediately took revenge. Chu Yang's heart skipped a beat. Although the cultivation of this divine soul was high, his spiritual attainment might not be that good. Immediately, the tribulation soul seemed to become sentimental again and a look of melancholy appeared on his face as he muttered, "This old master is now a tribulation soul, so how can I still have the face to mention my past name? The past is like dust, and the years are like smoke. I've disgraced my ancestors." Chu Yang smiled faintly and said, "The opponent is strong, but it's not a fault to fight. Even if I fail at the last minute, being able to live like this for hundreds of thousands of years and quietly feel the passage of time is not necessarily another kind of cultivation. This is not necessarily not a rare luck. As for whether it's bad luck or good luck, it depends on the person." The divine soul showed a look of approval in his eyes. He looked up to the sky and sighed. "That's right. This is also another kind of cultivation. Bad luck. Good luck. It's a matter of opinion." He stood there a bit dejectedly for a while, and actually said with a bit of reluctance, "This old man hasn't spoken for hundreds of thousands of years. Today, I am able to chat with you. It is fate that brings us together." Chu Yang said very understandingly, "Junior can accompany Senior to chat for a while." Tribulation's divine soul sighed. "You are a sensible child." He was silent for a moment before he said, "Now, I wonder what year it is in the outside world. Is the Emperor of the Eastern Royal Heaven still Shui Leihan?" Chu Yang said, "I really haven't calculated what year it is outside. But the Emperor of the East is indeed Shui Leihan. There's no doubt about that." He he he. The divine soul's expression suddenly changed. From a kind-looking old man, he suddenly turned into a ferocious ghost. However, she changed back immediately and actually smiled lightly. Shui Leihan is indeed worthy of being the Emperor of the East. You are indeed wise and powerful. Chu Yang's heart skipped a beat. She obviously couldn't keep her cool, but she was forcefully suppressing it. This was also something that could be made use of. Then, he thought to himself, looking at her change, could it be that this fellow is very dissatisfied with Shui Leihan? Could it be that Shui Leihan killed her? He smiled amiably and said, but although the Emperor is wise and powerful, sometimes, the things he does are unavoidably unfair. Sigh, Senior, you haven't gone out for so many years. Even if I tell you some things, you won't know. So, it's better not to say it. Tribulation's divine soul smiled lightly and said, if you don't want to say it, then don't say it. How can we judge the right and wrong of such a top figure? He didn't seem to be anxious about this topic at all. Chu Yang said, that's right. May I ask Senior, what sect was originally here? Why didn't I see any sect symbol when I came in this time? He actually managed to divert the topic away. Tribulation's divine soul's peaceful expression finally showed some displeasure. He said lightly, no matter what sect it was, it has already been destroyed and turned into dust, annihilated in the annals of history. What's the point of mentioning its name now? So, on the day I woke up, I destroyed all the symbols here that could prove my sect's identity. I see, no wonder, no wonder. Realization dawned on Chu Yang. He casually flattered him. Senior is indeed wise. Tribulation's divine soul looked at this little fellow coldly. But now, he felt annoyed no matter how he looked at him. Back then, when his sect was massacred, the Emperor of the East, Shui Leihan, stood by and did nothing. This matter had always made him bear a grudge, and he couldn't let it go even after his death. Even though he transformed into human form again, he still bore a grudge. Naturally, he couldn't wait for someone to say more bad things about Shui Leihan. Although he didn't mind it on the surface, in his heart, he hoped that Chu Yang would say more bad things about the Emperor of the East. But Chu Yang actually refused to mention it. Why did he feel that this bastard was pleasing to the eye just now? Illusion, it must be an illusion. Has His Majesty the Emperor of the East made any new moves in these years? Tribulation's divine soul asked. This sentence was actually trying to get to the bottom of it, hoping to find something to vent his anger on so that he could use it as a pretext to make a fuss. Chu Yang shook his head blankly. With an honest and sincere expression, he said, Senior, I've actually just ascended to the heavens. It's only been a few days. Even if it's the Eastern Royal Heavens, my knowledge is extremely limited. I really haven't heard anything about His Majesty the Emperor of the East's moves. Tribulation's divine soul's face twitched. He really had an impulse to curse. Before his death, he had cultivated himself very well, and his cultivation was high. Naturally, his willpower was also very strong. But after transforming into a divine soul and going through hundreds of thousands of years of loneliness by himself, he actually felt that he was becoming more and more impatient. It was as if his original calmness had gone to who knew where. He actually became irritable and easily angered. In just a short while, he actually wanted to kill so many times. But he really couldn't bear to kill Chu Yang just like that. After all, no one had spoken to him for hundreds of thousands of years. Now that he was talking to someone, he felt a surge of emotions. There was an indescribable excitement and even a sense of novelty. Next, Tribulation's divine soul began to ask Chu Yang about the general situation of the outside world. Chu Yang answered all these questions seriously. But under the cover of his honest and sincere expression, there were endless lies. Every word that this guy said was a complete lie. The affairs of the world are unpredictable. Now that the world outside has gone through a series of battles, the number of experts has fallen. Someone like me can't be regarded as a first-rate or second-rate expert. But, I can barely be regarded as a third-rate expert. Chu Yang spoke without thinking. What? With your trashy strength, you can be considered a third-rate expert? The Calamity Divine Soul was truly shocked this time. The small, ant-like strength in front of it, at best, had just broken through to the heaven stage, but it was already considered a third-rate strength. Then, what level of martial arts in the outside world had fallen to? No wonder Senior is so shocked. Actually, I've also flipped through many ancient records. The records recorded the glory of countless supreme experts of the past. Given Junior's strength, I'm only slightly stronger than an ant. But now, the number of geniuses in the Eastern Royal Immortal Realms has dwindled. Given Junior's strength, the Eastern Royal Immortal Realms have already invited Junior to join the Eastern Royal Immortal Realms. Chu Yang was clearly addicted to making things up. The more he argued, the more ridiculous things became. I say, little, even if you want to boast in front of this old man, shouldn't you say something more reliable? With your little bit of strength, the officials of the Eastern Royal Heavens actually invited you to join? Do you even believe your own words? Tribulation's divine soul was angered by Chu Yang's words. Although Junior's strength is weak, I have a clean background and my strength can be considered passable. Hence, the Eastern Royal Heavens have already invited Junior several times, but Junior is truly afraid of bringing trouble to myself. I've politely rejected every time because according to the rumors, the Eastern Royal Emperor Xue Leihan suddenly brought up the matter of the Purple Firmament Heavenly Emperor again and offended the sage monarch. I heard that he is now heavily injured and it's not a blessing for him to be associated with the Eastern Royal Heavens. Chu Yang sighed, of course, this might just be a rumor. How would a minor character like me know the real situation? Xue Leihan is heavily injured. For the matter of the Purple Firmament Heavenly Emperor, Tribulation's divine soul suddenly became agitated as if he had eaten an aphrodisiac. Are you serious? What happened to the Purple Firmament Heavenly Emperor, Zihao? Chu Yang was instantly speechless. He always spouted nonsense, but at this moment, he actually didn't know how to continue. How many years had it been since the Purple Firmament Heavenly Emperor, Zihao, died? It seemed to be at least a few 100,000 years, right? And this divine soul that had been buried for a few 100,000 years actually didn't know that the Purple Firmament Heavenly Emperor was already dead. Chu Yang's heart was cramping. This guy, how many years had it been since he died? Could it be more than 1,000,000 years? Of course, in such a space, one couldn't sense the passage of time at all. Perhaps even this divine soul didn't know how many years had passed. You don't know about the Purple Firmament Heavenly Emperor? Chu Yang was speechless. Tell me, what happened to the Purple Firmament Heavenly Emperor? Tribulation's divine soul suddenly became a little crazy. His eyes shone with an extremely violent and bloodthirsty look as he shouted, "What happened to Zihao? Speak. Hurry up and tell me. If you spout any more nonsense, I'll swallow you alive." Suddenly, with a boom, his body exploded abruptly, turning into countless ferocious ghost heads, circling wildly in the air. Countless heads, all hideous and terrifying, roared toward the sky together. Purple Firmament Heavenly Emperor, Zihao. What happened to him? What happened to him? Hurry up and tell me. Tell me. At this moment, he had completely gone crazy. Chapter 2088. Although Chu Yang's expression was still mostly fake, his body was actually drenched in cold sweat. It was not that Chu Yang was not brave enough, but it was really the first time he had seen such a phenomenon in his life. Thousands of ghosts appeared, right in front of him. A timid person would have already passed out from such a scene. His mind was full of thoughts, and for a moment, he did not know how to speak at all. This person definitely knows the Heavenly Emperor of Purple Clouds himself. He was actually so shocked and agitated when he heard about Zihao. Then, is this person a friend or a foe of the Heavenly Emperor of Purple Clouds? If he made a wrong judgment at this time, judging from how impulsive this guy was, he would immediately lose his life. No matter how much he could say, it would be useless. One wrong word and the door to death would open. From the fact that he kept calling him Heavenly Emperor of Purple Clouds or Zihao and did not use honorifics, the two of them should not be friends. Chu Yang thought quickly. At least not brothers. And there was only impatience in his voice, not a hint of worry. This means, he is an enemy. Say it. Why are you still not saying it? Countless ferocious heads roared together, their voices shaking the world. What exactly happened to Zihao? He is dead. Chu Yang said in the calmest tone, his soul has completely dispersed. As for the details, it is not something I can know. Dead. The heavenly emperor of purple clouds, Zihao, is dead. And his soul has dispersed. The spirit of the tribulation screamed in disbelief. Even the countless ghosts' heads shook violently and turned into black smoke at this moment. It was Misty. It could be seen how big of a shock this news was to him. Then, a cloud of black smoke suddenly appeared in front of Chu Yang again. From what you know, tell me in detail, how exactly did Zihao die? How did he die? How did he die? The voice was hurried, and in the end, it directly connected without stopping. Chu Yang frowned and said, "You are so close to me, I am a little out of breath." The black smoke immediately retreated 15 meters and transformed back into a huge ghost head. Its mouth seemed to be even bigger than the head, and it roared at the sky, "I've retreated. Hurry up and tell me how he died, how he died, how he died, aha!" Boom. Suddenly, the entire space was filled with ghostly cries, and demons were dancing wildly. Black smoke filled the air, covering the sky and the earth. An extremely sinister aura suddenly enveloped the entire area. Looking around, other than the area within 30 feet that was barely visible, the rest of the area had sunk into an extremely dark place where one could not even see their own fingers. Chu Yang could clearly hear the rapid beating of thousands and tens of thousands of heart. However, apart from himself, there was no other living being in this place, including the sword spirit. The sword spirit didn't have an organ like a heart. What was going on? However, the changes weren't all negative, because Chu Yang also had another feeling. This feeling made Chu Yang extremely happy. This change was that the space seal controlled by the tribulation spirit seemed to show signs of loosening. It seemed that the tribulation spirit didn't realize that there was a problem with its control due to its agitation. However, this small gap was far from enough for Chu Yang to escape. However, Chu Yang's heart had already calmed down a little. At the very least, there's hope. With this little bit of opportunity, there's still a chance. Sure enough, the weakness is my mental strength. It's my determination. Although he had heard the sword spirit talk about the terror of the tribulation spirit before he came in, he really didn't expect that the tribulation spirit could be so terrifying. This adventure was enough to make Chu Yang unforgettable for the rest of his life. It was definitely the closest he had come to death in his 2 lives. There was no other. Even just now, he was already prepared to die with a smile. Not to mention the death in his previous life, that was a real death, not a close one. From what I know, combined with all the legends of the Heavenly Imperial Court, the death of the Heavenly Emperor of Xiaobak then was really the creation of an eternal legend. Chu Yang tidied up his mood and slowly said. He told the tribulation spirit about the changes in the legend of the Heavenly Emperor of Xiao that he knew. Of course, he wouldn't be stupid enough to tell the tribulation spirit everything, but 70% of it was true. As soon as he opened his mouth, the tribulation spirit's entire person suddenly quieted down, listening to every word with rapt attention. He was afraid of missing out on a little bit. It could be seen how urgent and serious he was about this information. After attracting all of the divine soul's attention, Chu Yang tried to add a little bit of the power of bewitchment to his voice. If this little bit of power was compared to the total amount that Chu Yang could use, this little bit of power of bewitchment was definitely less than 1%. But Chu Yang really didn't dare to increase it. If this wasn't already the limit of his control, he would have even reduced it a little. Because once it was detected, he would really be dead. But he couldn't not use it at this moment. This was probably his only chance to escape. Where the opportunity was, where the chance of survival was. This time, the tribulation spirit only cared about listening to the Heavenly Emperor of Xiao, and really didn't notice this. He didn't need to worry about an ant like Chu Yang plotting against him. If he dared to plot against him, he could plot against him. From his point of view, Chu Yang would definitely not be able to escape from here. He could slowly play with him. Even if he played for decades, it wouldn't be a problem. How many years had it been? No one had accompanied him to talk, no one had accompanied him to pass the time. He was really so lonely that he was going crazy. The extraterrestrial demons invaded the purple cloud heavens on a large scale. The heavenly emperor of Zi Xiao led his troops to resist. Chu Yang's voice was full of emotion and was very infectious. The tribulation spirit listened quietly and didn't interrupt at all. It was as if he was fascinated by it. It's a pity that in the end, he was alone and without help. All his troops died heroically in battle. Even though the heavenly emperor of Zi Xiao was tyrannical beyond compare, he still couldn't escape in the end. This is the cause and effect. Chu Yang let out a long sigh. The tribulation spirit also let out a long sigh. The black fog shook, but he returned to the appearance of an old man. He looked up to the sky for a long time before he murmured somewhat absent-mindedly, "Died heroically in battle. Died heroically in battle. Zi Hao is really dead. He's really dead. How can he be dead?" The tribulation spirit was silent for a full 5 minutes. Suddenly, he exploded. He beat his chest and stomped his feet. He looked up to the sky and roared, "How can he be dead? Why did he die like this? Why? Why?" This sudden roar made Chu Yang feel as if his head had been shaken. He was immediately dizzy from this extremely loud roar, and blood flowed out of his 7 orifices. The tribulation spirit was still shouting and yelling. "Zi Hao shouldn't have died like this. He shouldn't have. He should have died in my hands. He should have died in my hands. Zi Hao, you damned executioner, why did you die?" The tribulation spirit's expression became even crazier. He tore at his own hair and stomped his feet. His face was ferocious, and his body went through thousands of illusions. He yelled, "If you're dead, who are the 78,000 or so wronged souls here going to take their lives? You should have died in my hands. You should only have died in my hands." The tribulation spirit looked up to the sky and roared. Chu Yang's heart shook. This sentence finally made Chu Yang understand. It completely connected all the causes and effects in this place. It turned out that this place, this super sect, this calamitous divine soul, this realm of the divine source, was actually destroyed in the hands of the heavenly emperor of the purple cloud. It was the heavenly emperor of Zi Xiao who turned this place into what it was now. In the end, he even used the soul-suppressing stone to completely suppress it. If not for his accidental actions that day, perhaps this realm of the divine source would still be sealed for a long time. At this moment, the tribulation spirit was unusually agitated. Black smoke drifted over and over. It could be seen that the agitation in his heart was already uncontrollable. Suddenly, a hand appeared out of thin air, and grabbed Chu Yang's neck. Then, it lifted him up. "Bastard. Is what you said just now true? Is it true or not?" Chu Yang's feet left the ground. He smiled bitterly and said, "Elder, this is a big matter that the whole world knows. How would I dare to lie? What you said makes sense too." The tribulation spirit loosened his hand and threw Chu Yang to the ground. He said angrily, "But what if the heavenly emperor of Zi Xiao is dead? That bastard, that demon executioner, that inhumane butcher, he's already dead, and he actually died with the title of a hero. What kind of bullshit legend did he create? How can there be such a good thing in the world? That damn bastard, he's still a hero even when he's dead. This isn't fair, it's not fair. The heavens are unfair." The tribulation spirit roared at the sky. He pointed at the sky. "Heavens, you're unfair. You're unfair. You're unfair. RRR." He began to scream hysterically. Chu Yang became more and more anxious. Because, although this tribulation spirit was now in a state of frenzy, and even a little unconscious, and the space seal had weakened further, Chu Yang still couldn't move at all. If he was still unable to escape before this terrifying fellow regained his senses, then when he truly faced this opponent, there wouldn't even be the slightest bit of luck. Back then, after 300,000 years of accumulation in front of the heavenly storm sect, we finally became a super sect. But just because we killed the family of Zi Hao's sworn brother's descendant, we incurred such a terrible revenge. The soul of the calamity suddenly quieted down and muttered to itself in a somewhat dejected manner. Its voice was very soft, but within that soft voice, there was an infinite amount of violence. Zi Hao was bored and passed by here, but what does this have to do with him? Why did he meddle in other people's business? On what basis? On what basis? When he said the last 3 words "on what basis," he let out another earth-shattering roar. Chu Yang grinned. You killed the family of his sworn brother's descendant, and you still have the nerve to say that it has nothing to do with him? What kind of logic is this? But he finally knew that this sect that had disappeared in the annals of history was called the Heavenly Storm Sect. Chapter 2089. Zi Hao is here to look for trouble, to seek revenge. This old man is not an unreasonable person, so I will not go against you. As long as he revealed his identity, I would have handed over the culprit. But that hateful Zi Hao actually concealed his identity and came here, purposely making us misunderstand and let us attack him first. Then, he took the opportunity to fly into a rage and completely wipe out my entire sect. Hateful. Hateful. Despicable. Shameless. The divine spirit continued to shout. Chu Yang thought to himself, looks like this old fellow is also the kind of person who bullies the weak and fears the strong. He stopped fighting once he revealed his identity. If he didn't reveal his identity, he became despicable and shameless. This is really shameful logic. Is this the legendary hooligan theory? If you have something to say, say it. Why talk about identity? It's obviously you who are despicable and shameless, but in the end, it's others who are hateful and despicable. What kind of logic is this? The hateful emperor of the East actually stood aside and watched. He didn't help my sect at all. He even completely blocked off the news here. The divine spirit shouted agitatedly. Chu Yang thought to himself, Shui Leihan and Zi Hao are close friends. Why would he help you? He's already giving you face by not making a move. On second thought, he couldn't help but laugh. If I still have to trouble the 2 emperors to make a move together, that's really giving them too much face. Even if I die, I'll be famous forever. What are you laughing at? The divine spirit was very sensitive now. Seeing Chu Yang smile, he couldn't help but shout, What are you laughing at? What are you laughing at? Chu Yang laughed. It's rumored that the Emperor of the East, Shui Leihan, and the Heavenly Emperor of the Purple Clouds, Zi Hao, are sworn friends. That's right. Of course. That calamitous spirit's attention was instantly drawn. It roared furiously, otherwise, how could he watch us perish and not do anything about it? This is collusion between officials and bandits. This is corruption and perversion of the law. This is black-hearted. Despicable Shui Leihan. Hateful Zi Hao. I heard that when the Heavenly Emperor of the Purple Clouds, Zi Hao, died in battle, Shui Leihan once had a conflict with the Saint Lord. Chu Yang said. The soul of the calamity held its breath in an instant. What conflict? The tone of its voice was somewhat cautious. I don't know. My status isn't high. But I heard that after that incident, the Eastern Royal Heavens and the Saint Lord became somewhat estranged. Chu Yang spoke without thinking. And just a few thousand years ago, for some unknown reason, the Saint Lord suddenly caused a ruckus because of this incident. In a fit of rage, the Saint Lord actually personally took action and fought a great battle with the Eastern Royal Emperor, Shui Leihan. Ah! The divine soul of the calamity cried out in alarm. How could there be such a thing? Suddenly, he hurriedly ran all over the place to vent the excitement and shock in his heart. There's actually such a thing. Ah! Awoo! The Eastern Sovereign and the Sage were battling. Courting death. Courting death. Courting death. This is too fun. Ha 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 ha. The corner of Chu Yang's mouth twitched. To be able to gloat to such an extent, this guy is really something. His current appearance was completely different from when he first appeared. If he had not seen it with his own eyes, Chu Yang would not have dared to believe that this evil-looking skull in front of him was that immortal-looking old man from before. Quick, tell me how they fought in the end. The divine soul of the calamity was extremely excited. One moment, it turned into countless skeletons, the next moment, it turned into a huge ghost head, and the next moment, it turned into black smoke all over the ground, twisting and changing constantly. One moment, it turned into a bee, and the next moment, it turned into a bee. Back then, I heard that the divine technique that Shui Leihan used as his trump card was called something like the Great Moon Technique. Chu Yang spouted nonsense. It's the Eastern sovereign sun and moon technique, the divine soul of the calamity hurriedly added. Then, the sage roared, "Hey, look at my chrysanthemum divine technique." Chu Yang was already rambling. What chrysanthemum divine technique? The divine soul of the calamity said furiously, "It's the red cloud's divine technique." Yes, it's the red cloud's divine technique. The two of them fought for more than half a year. In the end, the sage was more skilled. The Eastern sovereign Xue Leihan was scared out of his wits and fled with serious injuries. From then on, the Eastern sovereign heavens began to be suppressed. Batches of experts died. Chu Yang's saliva flew everywhere. Now, even someone like me has given me very high conditions. There's actually such a thing. Jianan's divine soul was stunned and speechless, believing it to be true. In other words, Zihao is really dead. The soul of the calamity murmured. Of course. Chu Yang felt his spiritual power fluctuating more and more. His heart relaxed a little. But as soon as he said that, the soul of the calamity went crazy again. He shouldn't have died. Extraterrestrial demons are nothing. Zihao should have been killed by me. He should have been killed by me. You should be swallowed by me bite by bite. His soul should have been completely scattered, and he should have been consigned to eternal damnation in my hand. Ah! Chu Yang could feel the effect, but he still couldn't do anything and couldn't move. He couldn't help but frown. It seemed that he had no choice but to take a risk. If you were given such a chance, are you sure you would be his opponent? Chu Yang suddenly mobilized his cultivation. This time, he used 100% of his bewitching power to suddenly ask this question. The soul of the calamity was stunned by this sudden question. Even his eyes were a little perplexed. This wasn't a trick. He was really bewitched by Chu Yang, but he was still immersed in the shock of the death of the heavenly emperor of Xiao. You weren't his opponent when you were alive that day, and even your entire sect was destroyed by him with a few sword moves. You actually want to kill him with your own hands? You're really indulging in fantasy, aren't you? Chu Yang's words became more and more vicious, and more irritating. Is it because you saw him die that you suddenly became awe-inspiring? You're really awe-inspiring. You bastard. Bullshit. Your mother's bullshit. The soul of the calamity stomped his feet and cursed. His expression was extremely ferocious. Countless skulls popped out like bubbles, and every mouth was cursing viciously. Hehe, senior, you're clearly seeing that he's already dead. No matter how awesome you say it, it's impossible for him to come and kill you. So, you're shaking your head. You're really awe-inspiring. This junior prostrates himself in admiration of you. The first half of Chu Yang's words seemed to be praise and criticism, but the second half of his words turned sharp. But what I admire is your despicableness, your shamelessness, your vulgarity, and your despicableness. As the saying goes, shamelessness is invincible in the world. You're invincible in talking now. You, what are you talking about? What did you say? What did you say? Can you say it again? The soul of the calamity was completely stunned by Chu Yang's words. He never thought that Chu Yang would dare to scold him like this in front of him. Not to mention now, even in the past, even when he was fighting Zihao, he had never been insulted like this. He was so angry that he was stunned. Why else would I say that you're invincible in the world? You're so thick-skinned. You actually want to hear it again. Unfortunately, I don't have the time. A coward like you. A villain who bullies the weak and fears the strong, a bastard with no moral integrity, a trash who specializes in hindsight. How can you still have the face to live in this world? If I were you, I would have found a crooked tree and hanged myself. Yes, it seems that this place is indeed not in this world. That's why you can struggle at death's door for so long. Even if I scold someone like you, it's embarrassing. Bah. Chu Yang was also completely throwing caution to the wind. If he didn't completely mess up the situation, he could only wait for death. Now, this guy's rage seemed to have begun to slowly subside. Once he really returned to his calm state, Chu Yang would really disappear from this place forever. The only way was to provoke him, and he had to provoke him completely. And the best way to provoke him completely was to start with the thing that he didn't want to face the most in his heart, and magnify it to the greatest extent possible. Otherwise, how could he provoke a super old monster who had lived for at least hundreds of thousands or even millions of years? Chu Yang's method was undoubtedly effective. In fact, it seemed to be very effective. The tribulation divine spirit was about to go crazy at this moment. He was so angry that black smoke was coming out of his head. Well, this wasn't an adjective. Black smoke was really coming out of his head. You're courting death. The tribulation divine spirit looked at Chu Yang and the sword spirit ferociously. I originally wanted to keep you for a while longer to relieve this old man of loneliness. I didn't expect you to be so reckless. Since you're deliberately courting death, this old man will fulfill your wish first. Don't worry, I won't kill you all at once. I'll kill you slowly and play you to death bit by bit. You're fucking giving me back. Chu Yang scolded him contemptuously. Even your body has been sent flying. All that's left is a cloud of fog. You still think you're a fucking human? Bah. Look at your ghost-like appearance. It makes me want to vomit. You still want to play old man? What old man are you using? Do you have that thing? Now that he was on the verge of death, Chu Yang was really going all out. What he should say, what he shouldn't say, what he could use and what he couldn't use, he used all of them. There was no other way. Who asked him to have no strength now? He could only rely on his mouth. The tribulation divine spirit was obviously extremely angry. He roared furiously and rushed overflowing with murderous intent. There was an awe-inspiring aura of death all around. Chu Yang kept provoking the tribulation divine spirit with his mouth, but in fact, he was burning with anxiety. Although the space seal had loosened a little, it still didn't open. A saint-level space seal was indeed extraordinary. Under such intense emotional fluctuations, even under the situation where he didn't care at all, it still didn't loosen. The tribulation divine spirit had already come close to him. With a hideous smile, he grabbed him with one hand. Little one, it's rare for you to scold so happily. Today, this old man will definitely let you enjoy the fun. In the many years that this old man has lived, I've had a lot of very special experiences. You'll also completely taste the unprecedented special treatment. In the future, you'll definitely experience a kind of extreme feeling in this world. This kind of feeling is called living a life worse than death, begging for death but not being able to. It was already close at hand. Chu Yang was still at his wits' end. The crisis was imminent. Chu Yang's mind suddenly moved. He suddenly closed his eyes and roared, "Big Brother Zihao." Suddenly, he felt weak all over. A man's promise was easy to say, but it was really fucking hard to do. I'm slapping my own mouth now. Chapter 2090. The Divine Spirit was stunned. What? Chu Yang laughed. I didn't expect you to really believe it. It's so satisfying. Ha ha ha. You've been deceived. Do you really think that the Heavenly Emperor of Purple Cloud is dead? Ha 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 ha. You childish bastard. He's not dead. The Divine Spirit's mind was in a mess. Not only is he not dead, he's behind you right now. Chu Yang roared. Big Brother Zihao. Kill him quickly. This is the best chance to kill him. His eyes stared straight behind the divine soul of the calamity. His face was filled with surprise and joy, as if he had just survived a disaster. The divine soul of the calamity shuddered and suddenly exploded. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? He suddenly rose from the ground and fled frantically. Back then, the Heavenly Emperor of Purple Cloud flattened the Heavenly Storm sect with one sword. The power of that sword had scared him out of his wits. He still had lingering fears. Although he was full of hatred and couldn't wait to kill his enemy, if the Heavenly Emperor of Purple Cloud really appeared, this divine spirit would definitely run faster than anyone else. After hundreds of thousands of years of loneliness, he had already forgotten the ways of the world. Chu Yang was in a state of absent-mindedness and extreme rage when he shouted. Moreover, Chu Yang had used his 100% bewitchment technique regardless of the consequences. So, he naturally became vigilant. At the same time, his heart became extremely flustered. Just as the soul and heart of the calamity fell into a state of panic, a gap suddenly appeared in the space seal that was originally seamless and without any gap. A gap finally appeared. Chu Yang was overjoyed. He struggled with all his might and shouted, "Go!" He reached out and pulled the sword spirit, who was locked and couldn't move from the beginning, into the space with unparalleled speed. The divine spirit turned back but found that the heavenly emperor of purple cloud wasn't behind him. He knew that he had been deceived and shouted angrily, "Stay!" The divine spirit's reaction was really fast. One of his hands turned into black smoke and chased after them at an unimaginable speed. He actually followed closely behind Chu Yang and the sword spirit. Before the space could close again, he followed them in. He grabbed Chu Yang's waist even more tightly. Chu Yang only felt a strong force pulling him. He didn't have the ability to resist. He was shocked. He shouted, "Sword spirit, you go first." He knew that if he was caught this time, there would be no more luck. He reached out and pushed the sword spirit into the tribulation space, and was about to fly out with the big hand. Otherwise, if the divine soul really chased them into the tribulation space, neither of them would be able to survive. However, it was at this moment that an unforeseen event occurred. A miserable howl suddenly resounded from outside. Then, the unprecedentedly powerful pulling force disappeared in an instant. Because Chu Yang had resisted with all his strength earlier, he was still pouncing forward with all his strength this time. The pulling force disappeared too quickly. With a plop, Chu Yang slammed into the sword spirit. The two of them turned into rolling gourds at the same time, rolling far away in the tribulation space. There seemed to be a big black hand on Chu Yang's back. It was tightly holding Chu Yang's waist, but it was slowly turning into a black fog. For some reason, the giant hand formed by Calamity's divine soul was actually broken. It was as if he had been cut in half by a sword. Chu Yang was full of surprise. Who saved me? Who had such great ability to cut off the Calamity's divine soul's hand with a sword? But at this moment, the tribulation space had been closed again. Even if Chu Yang had heavenly guts, he didn't dare to open it again. He didn't even dare to look back at the outside world. The Calamity's divine soul's ability was really too terrifying. Who knew how high his spiritual sense was? Even if he was in the tribulation space, he might not be safe. Safety first. In fact, it was already a blessing to be able to reach this point. There was no need to take any more risk. Chu Yang subconsciously took a few breaths. His mind calmed down a little. Suddenly, cold sweat broke out all over his body. In an instant, his clothes were drenched. During this period of time, Chu Yang seemed calm and unperturbed. In fact, how could he not be afraid? It was just that he had been forcibly suppressing and enduring. Now, he was finally safe for the time being. Thinking back to the fear in his heart, he still felt as if his soul would scatter at any time. It was too close. It was really too close. Bean-sized beads of sweat trickled down from his forehead. His entire body was trembling. Even his hands were shaking. His face turned deathly pale. Then, it turned waxy yellow. Then, it turned ashen, and finally, it turned deathly black. He had been changing his face for a long time, and he slowly recovered after a long while. The sword spirit was even worse than Chu Yang. The Calamity's divine soul's suppression on his power was several times more than Chu Yang's. After all, their characteristics were more similar. After entering the tribulation space, in the familiar environment, he finally recovered. His mind settled down. Moved, the sword spirit plopped down on his knees. "Lord Sword Master." For a moment, he was choked with sobs. Although he was completely restrained from the beginning, it didn't affect his vision and hearing. Of course, when he saw Chu Yang even sacrificing himself to protect him, his heart was in turmoil. He couldn't calm down anymore. Chu Yang had always said that he treated the sword spirit as a brother. The sword spirit had always been moved. However, he couldn't help but doubt. Is this true? The previous swordmasters only treated me as a sword spirit, a tool. Are you really that good? Or is it just a way to win me over? But at this moment, The sword spirit didn't have the slightest doubt in his heart. A sword master who could use his own life to fight for the sword spirit's life. A sword master who could do this. Even in extreme danger, at the last moment, he could still instinctively protect himself. What else was there to doubt? Chu Yang said weakly, "Sword spirit, can you be moved later?" "I can't move now. I don't even have the strength to speak." "Don't be moved first. I really don't have the strength to talk or argue with you." As he spoke, blood flowed out of his 7 orifices. When he was outside, his internal organs were continuously shaken by the calamity's divine soul's terrifying sound waves. In the end, he had to resist using all his cultivation to activate the bewitching power. Under the other party's unintentional but powerful reflection, even his body and divine soul had been seriously injured. It could be said that since Chu Yang's debut, he had never suffered such a serious injury. Being able to sit now was already the best he could do. He didn't even have the strength to speak. It was definitely not a lie. "See if there's any way to get this big black hand off my waist." Chu Yang coughed. "It's so stuck that I feel uncomfortable." "Yes." The sword spirit hurriedly stood up. Seeing this big black hand that was gradually dissipating, the sword spirit's eyes shone with a dazzling light. A soul like the sword spirit was a great tonic for the calamity's divine soul. But on the other hand, the calamity's divine soul was also the best tonic for the sword spirit. It was just that the sword spirit wasn't a threat to the calamity's divine soul at all. In essence, it was just a matter of who was stronger. But there were no absolutes in the world. For example, at this moment, the half-arm that was stuck to Chu Yang's body was in a state of continuous dissipation. It was equivalent to a broken supertonic without any will or resistance. How could the sword spirit not be excited? Just by swallowing this arm, the sword spirit's cultivation would instantly double, or even more. How could the sword spirit be polite? He fiercely and impatiently pounced forward. Chu Yang frowned, but he could clearly feel that the buckle on his waist was getting looser and looser. He kept thinking, what's going on? Why did the black hand suddenly break? Suddenly, he had a flash of inspiration. Oh right, the calamity sword went out to collect elixirs and was always outside. Could it be the calamity sword's doing? But after thinking about it, he felt that it was unlikely. Although Chu Yang knew that the calamity sword was extremely sharp, it depended on who it was facing. With the current power of the calamity sword, it didn't seem to be able to deal with the calamity's divine soul at all. Not to mention cutting off one of the calamity's divine soul's arms. So, what was going on here? Chu Yang, who was chewing 2 heavy pills to treat his internal and external injuries, was puzzled. Well, I'd better try to recall the calamity sword now. If the calamity sword was lost here, my loss would be too great. Just as Chu Yang entered the calamity space, a sword light suddenly fell. Like a thunderbolt, it instantly cut off the calamity's divine soul's arm that had already entered the calamity space. The sword energy was so sharp that it was really unparalleled. It directly destroyed all the divine soul's vitality in that arm. The calamity's divine soul let out a tragic scream. It hurriedly retreated, retreating a full 3,000 feet. It opened its eyes in fear and looked in front of it. At this moment, it didn't even dare to transform into black fog again. Because this sword could actually devour. This was undoubtedly a strange sword. It shone with a cold light, as if there was a color that wandered back and forth on the sword. It could be said that its appearance was extremely good. The calamity's divine soul looked at this sword with extreme fear. It could clearly feel that this sword contained an enormous and unparalleled power. It didn't even feel this kind of power from the purple cloud heavenly emperor back then. The calamity's divine soul didn't doubt that this sword could easily destroy it. How could there be a divine sword with such power in this world? How was this possible? That sword was the calamity sword. The calamity sword shone with an awe-inspiring cold light. It swayed in front of the calamity's divine soul in a contemptuous manner. The sword tip was crooked, and the way it flew was disorderly. There was no order to it at all. It seemed that it could be easily knocked down by just reaching out. But the calamity's divine soul didn't dare to move at all. Not to mention moving, It didn't even dare to move half of it, for fear of provoking that divine sword. Its eyes followed the sword back and forth. The calamity sword's body shook, and a blurry shadow slowly appeared on it. Although the shadow was blurry, its eyes were filled with an unprecedented ferocious aura. It looked fiercely at the calamity's divine soul and said sinisterly, "Fuck. You sure have guts, you second-rate brat." Chapter 2091. The white-bearded elder in black stomped his feet and sighed. At this moment, he wanted to tear Yuan Shitu into pieces. How could such a strong person be threatened by others? You can beg him, you can admit defeat, you can even beg for mercy. But, you absolutely can't be coerced. And you're using a woman that you snatched to threaten a super strong person. This Yuan Shitu is really out of his mind. It was the most unsuitable path, but he had chosen to take it. Of course, the white-bearded elder in black was completely wrong. It wasn't that Chu Yang didn't want to negotiate, but he really couldn't hear anything now. Besides, it was too late for any conditions now. Because Chu Yang had already launched his ultimate move. Once this move was used, everyone present was destined to go to the Yellow Springs together. Chu Yang cruelly walked all the way. He swung his sword all the way, destroying everything in his path. He was invincible. Blood rained down from the tribulation sword. In front of him, there were still people. For the time being, there were still people. Behind him, there were all corpses. Along the way, a river of blood flowed behind them. Every one of them had died miserably as one could imagine. In front of Chu Yang, there were only 30 to 40 people left. Everyone's face was ashen. Even though everyone here was an expert among experts, and everyone had killed countless people before, witnessing this clean massacre with their own eyes today still made them tremble in fear. Especially when many of the people who were killed were at the same cultivation level as them. They couldn't resist at all and were slaughtered like chickens. Perhaps the next moment, it would be their turn. They would also die miserably like those people before them. Everyone felt like they were dreaming. It was a horrible nightmare that they never wanted to have. They all hardened their hearts. If they were lucky enough to survive today, they would definitely make Yuan Shitu's life a living hell. Damn it, this bastard is killing us. Yuan Shitu still grabbed Tai Butian and subconsciously retreated slowly. His face was completely drained of blood. He had already realized that he had really poked a hornet's nest this time. He had hit a super iron plate. He was already regretting it. But no matter how much he regretted it now, he couldn't change the fact. He couldn't save anyone's life. Everyone, attack together. The black-clothed, white-bearded old man shouted, "Now that things have come to this, there's no turning back. We can only fight with our lives on the line. Only by moving forward bravely can we have a chance of survival. Send some men to protect the young master. Hurry up and leave. Put that woman down, don't hold on to her anymore. If you bring her back, perhaps the entire ink cloud sky will fall into a nightmare." The black-clothed, white-bearded old man nearly vomited blood as he cried out. If Yuan Shitu didn't have that identity, they definitely wouldn't care about it and directly hand it over. But now, they absolutely didn't dare to do so. Even if he were to die this time, he wouldn't dare. Immediately, someone flew out to pick up Yuan Shulu. "Young master, let's go." "Leave? Where should we go?" Yuan Shu asked helplessly. "Damn it, put this woman down. I'm begging you." That person grabbed the unconscious Tai Butian and said angrily, "Run." He pulled Yuan Shitu and was about to escape. But at this moment, Kong's murderous aura suddenly rose sharply. That aura that could destroy heaven and earth also suddenly rose to the extreme. Everyone seemed to have suddenly fallen into a nightmare. They were muddle-headed and couldn't move at all. Cha. Chu Yang's footsteps sounded like a death knell. His cold eyes didn't move and the cruel smile at the corner of his mouth was still as cold as a knife. "In this world, who dares to snatch my woman?" Chu Yang looked up to the sky and roared violently, "Who dares?" The members of the Ghost Hunter stood stiffly and couldn't move at all. They were like wooden statues, and they all had an urge to cry out loud from the bottom of their hearts. Although they had seen many deaths, but to be implicated and die in such a sullen manner was too unjust. Everyone had already received the news that such a big incident had happened here. Not only Ink Cloud Sky and the other two big sects had already arrived, even Yun Tian and Shuexian had also rushed over. Looking at the hell-like scene in front of them, everyone kept quiet out of fear. Other than shock, there was only horror. In such a strange and infinitely terrifying situation, Chu Yang was directly the god of death that no one could resist. At this time, who dared to stand up for the ghost realm? Who dared to stand up for Yuan Shu too? That was directly seeking death. Not only seeking death, but also dying miserably, never to be reincarnated and beyond redemption. Even Mo Yuntian's other two big sects, after seeing this situation, everyone felt insecure and kept quiet out of fear. They were afraid that Chu Yang would implicate them. Who would dare to step forward? What's more, it was Yuan Shitu who was in the wrong first. He snatched someone else's woman, so he naturally had to bear the other party's revenge. Why would others take the blame for him? Why? Besides, whose woman couldn't he snatch? There were so many people in the world and Yuan Shu too wanted to court death. There was nothing to say. No matter what he did, he had to pay a price. Yuan Shu too had never met such a tough person before. That was his luck and of course, there was no price to pay. But it was different this time, or it could be said that his luck had come to an end. Naturally, he had to pay the price in full. There was no suspense in this matter. Looking at the situation, Yun Tian's expression was unusually heavy. Chu Yang was only at the heaven level before. This was confirmed by many people. But now, his cultivation has suddenly increased by so much. It's actually so strong that even a heaven-level expert can't resist. Could it be that he had been holding back all this time? Did he really hide so much? So much? This is really hard to say. If his real strength is like this, it's reasonable that we can't see through it. The Sky Sword Union's elder beside him was shocked. It's just that, such a terrifying murderous aura is unheard of in this world. It's hard to say what Chu Yang's real strength is, but I think it shouldn't be to this extent. I reckon that the reason why he can be so strong now should be because he used some kind of mysterious secret method to activate some kind of powerful force for his own use. But we still don't know what it is exactly. We can only come to a conclusion after seeing Chu Yang's performance after the battle. Once this force is released, Chu Yang will die or be seriously injured. This means that although this force is powerful, it has a huge flaw or drawback. But if Chu Yang is safe and sound in the end, it means that Chu Yang's real strength has already reached such a level. His usual self is just a layer of disguise. The Sky Sword Union's elder's voice was heavy. If it's really the latter result, it means that Heaven Imperial Court has another expert who is almost comparable to Die Hu. Then, Heaven Imperial Court will be in a lot of trouble from now on. Yun Tian took in a breath of cold air. His pupils shrank. Please don't let it be the latter result. Otherwise, how could he compete with Chu Yang? Yun Tian said softly, if Yuan Shitu is really killed by Chu Yang, what will the consequences be? That elder smiled bitterly. This is foreseeable. With Yuan Shitu's identity, Mo Yun Tian will definitely face a disaster. None of the people from the two big sects who came here will be able to survive. Moreover, these three super sects will definitely suffer a great loss. Yun Tian frowned and said, what about Eastern Royal Heaven? That elder pondered. That will depend on whether Chu Yang is dead or not. But Chu Yang's forces will definitely be destroyed. Chu Clan's courtyard will become a pile of rubble. It's just a matter of time. If Chu Yang really borrowed the power of heaven and earth, after this battle, he will probably die until everyone in Chu Clan's courtyard is dead. If Chu Yang survives, the Eastern Royal Heaven will be plunged into a calamity, a catastrophe created by Mo Yun Tian and Eastern Royal Heaven. Yun Tian smiled and said, His Majesty Eastern Royal Heaven will also not tolerate it. If Mo Yun Tian wants to behave atrociously in Eastern Royal Heaven, he's more or less still lacking. And Eastern Royal Heaven still has the advantage of being the landlord. That elder nodded and said, however, if Chu Yang doesn't die, how much attention will he receive? Yun Tian smiled relaxedly. No matter what, it's always a good thing for us to sit on the mountain and watch the tigers fight. That elder took a deep breath and said, yes, so we must get what we want as soon as possible and send it back as soon as possible. Yun Tian pondered and nodded slowly. At a place far away. Dreamlike veranda. Mo Qingwu inexplicably cried out in alarm. She had been practicing her martial arts. But, her petite body suddenly fell from the sky without any warning. She felt a sharp pain in the pit of her stomach. She almost couldn't breathe. At this moment, her heart actually missed Chu Yang endlessly. She missed him so much that she almost wanted to die. The next moment, her heart suddenly twitched with pain. Mo Qingwu screamed and fainted. While she was unconscious, Mo Qingwu seemed to have a dream. It was a dream that she didn't want to recall. She dreamed that she had returned to the purple bamboo forest in her previous life and was ambushed. Then, Chu Yang rushed over and fought her to death. Suddenly, Mo Qingwu's heart felt empty and sad. Suddenly, there was another wave of dizziness. It was as if she had changed into another space. There was no one in the surroundings. Everything was hazy and white. Is anyone here? What is this place? Where is this place? Mo Qingwu shouted. But no one answered. There was silence. It was frighteningly empty. Just as Mo Qingwu was feeling puzzled, she suddenly saw a figure in front of her. She focused her eyes and saw that Chu Yang had suddenly appeared in front of her. She was looking at him deeply. It was as if he had turned into an illusion. Chapter 2092. It didn't matter how strange Chu Yang's appearance was, as long as Chu Yang was here again. Before that, nothing else was important. Unexpectedly, Chu Yang didn't answer Mo Qingwu. Instead, he looked at her affectionately. He looked at her in an unusual way. It was full of longing, reluctance, and guilt. Chu Yang, what's wrong with you? Did something happen to him? You. Mo Qingwu instinctively realized that something was wrong. Taking a closer look, she realized that Chu Yang was covered in blood, and there seemed to be fresh blood dripping from his body. That was Chu Yang's own blood. Chu Yang was injured. Who hurt you? Mo Qingwu, who realized this, cried out in heartache. It was even more painful than if she were injured herself. She stepped forward, wanting to hug Chu Yang. But Chu Yang shook his head slightly and took a step back, avoiding Mo Qingwu. Qingwu, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. Chu Yang's voice was full of affection and guilt. No, you don't have anything to be sorry about. Tell me, what's wrong with you? What's wrong with you? Tell me. Mo Qingwu rushed forward quickly, but Chu Yang was always 3 feet away from her. They were so close, but it was as if they were at the end of the world. He just floated there, looking at her affectionately. I'm sorry, I'm really sorry. Chu Yang said softly, Qingwu, do you know how much I like you? Back then, you died for me, and I was so heartbroken. After the battle on the Wind Thunder platform, when I died, I had already completely repented. The most precious thing in the world is you, and I've already lost you. At that time, I swore that if there was a next life, I'd dance with you. I swore that if there was a next life, I'd only love you, I'd only like you, and you'd be my destined wife, Chu Yang said slowly. Mo Qingwu only felt waves of pain in her heart. She was a little flustered, as if the most beautiful thing in her life was leaving her. No, don't say any more. I understand. I only want you. Chu Yang, nothing else is important. As long as you're good, everything else is fine. I'm already very satisfied now, really satisfied. Qingwu will accompany Juanxing. I'll never regret it in my life. No, I want to say it. Let me finish. Chu Yang's eyes focused on her face as he slowly shook his head. Ever since I was reborn in this life, I have made up my mind to protect you. I will do everything in my power to protect you. I will reverse our destinies. I will go against the heaven's will and accompany you for the rest of my life. I want to marry you and be together for all eternity. But in the end, I didn't keep my promise. I broke my promise again and again. I'm sorry, Qingwu. I said that I wouldn't make you sad, but I didn't do it. Bu Tian, that day was an accident. I didn't know that she was a girl. That day, I was drugged with an aphrodisiac. At the moment of my death, she saved me. She used her innocence to save me. Then, she gave birth to a son for me. I can't. Qianqian was deeply in love with me, but I didn't accept it. It was because of you. At that time, I only wanted to give you the most complete part of me. But I didn't think that I already owed someone too much. When Qianqian died to save me in the upper three heavens, my heart wavered again. Qingwu, I'm sorry. It turns out that I'm also a sentimental person. Or maybe I don't deserve to use the word sentimental. Take it as me finding an excuse for myself. Chu Yang smiled gently. In his smile, there was affection, helplessness, and no regrets. Later, when I found out about Bu Tian, I became even more confused. I also can't let her down. I have to bear the responsibility of a man. So, I have to let you down. This is unfair to you. As a husband, as a father, I don't think I can't bear the most basic responsibility to them just because I have to uphold the oath and promise I made to you before I died in my previous life. That would also be unfair. My final decision is to go against that oath. I'm only sorry to you. I once wanted to use my entire life to make up for my guilt and regret. I've also decided, no matter what, I'll make you happy, but I'm afraid I can't do it now. I've actually broken my oath once again. Isn't my integrity very bad? Mo Qingwu's tears flowed down. I know, Chu Yang, I really know. I know everything. Although I'm also angry, and I've also lost my temper with you before, I really don't blame you. I cherish our 2 lives of love more than anyone else. Chu Yang, please believe me, I really don't blame you. Your sincerity is very good. I've always believed in it. I know. Chu Yang sighed with relief. He said with a bit of melancholy, I really know. I'm even more sorry that I can't even give you that most basic happiness now. I'm a terrible man. I'm going to disappoint you. Mo Qingwu's body swayed. She suddenly felt as if her heart was breaking into pieces. You. What's wrong? What's wrong? Everything happened too suddenly. Bu Tian was captured. I wanted to save her. But the enemy was really too strong. So strong that it exceeded the limits of my abilities. Bu Tian, I used a forbidden technique that I can't use. I'm destined to die. It's coming. Chu Yang smiled and said, Qingwu, don't blame Bu Tian. Bu Tian is also my woman. Qingwu, for you, I can do anything. For you, I can disregard life and death. But for her, I can also. I just hope you don't blame me. Please don't be angry with me. Chu Yang smiled and looked at her affectionately. His body slowly flew back, and his speed gradually increased. Qingwu, in the future, you must take care. You must take care. Don't go, don't leave me. Mo Qingwu screamed crazily. Her tears flowed like a fountain. Chu Yang, don't go. I'll listen to you in the future. I won't be angry with you. I can accept anything, just don't go. Don't go. It's too late. Chu Yang's blood-soaked body slowly blurred, but his eyes were still smiling affectionately. Qingwu, I really love you. I'll love you forever. Don't go. You liar. You said that you'd accompany me forever. You said that you'd marry me. You said it. You solemnly promised it. Mo Qingwu chased after him crazily. If you dare to leave, I'll never forgive you. I will never forgive you for the rest of my life. Don't even think about leaving me alone. Don't go. Qingwu, take care of yourself. Chu Yang's body was like a ray of light. In the blink of an eye, he had already disappeared thousands of miles away. Qingwu, my most beloved, take care. His voice lingered in the air, and still reverberated in their ears. But, Chu Yang's figure had already disappeared. Liar. You liar. Woo woo woo. If you dare to leave, I'll die in front of you. Don't even think about leaving me alone. Mo Qingwu scolded him crazily, wailing. Chu Yang, don't go. She suddenly woke up with a start, only to find her master looking at her with concern. Qing Wu, wake up. What's wrong? Did you have a nightmare? Mo Qing Wu looked around blankly, only to find herself lying on the bed. It turned out that she had a dream just now, a nightmare. But how could this dream be so real? She obviously didn't want to think about it at all, but all the scenes were vivid in her mind. She didn't forget a single detail. The feeling of the dream was completely brought to reality. Her tears were still falling, and the throbbing pain in her heart was still continuing. She was still terrified, still in despair. What's wrong with me? Why is it like this? Why did you suddenly fall down when you were fine? Are you hurt? The beautiful woman looked at Mo Qing Wu worriedly. Mo Qing Wu gasped for breath. Suddenly, she jumped up. Master, I want to go out for a while. Go out? Where are you going? The beautiful woman was puzzled. Mo Qing Wu, who was running out, suddenly stopped. She was at a loss. Yes, where am I going? Where is Chu Yang? I don't know at all. How can I find him? Where can I find him? Heaven and earth are vast. In the vast and boundless heavenly imperial court, finding a newcomer who just ascended was like finding a needle in a haystack. Mo Qing Wu looked around blankly, only feeling that she was the only one in the world. Suddenly, she felt an inexplicable pain in her heart again. She spat out a mouthful of blood and shouted, Chu Yang, Chu Yang. Don't go. She fell down stiffly. As long as you don't die, as long as you don't leave, I'm willing to give my life back to the heavens. What's the harm in exchanging a life for a life? Chu Yang, don't go, don't die. Mo Qing Wu was unconscious. Her body kept convulsing. She kept calling out silently, calling out to the person on the other side of her heart. What happened to you? Jiangnan. Small courtyard. Zi Sheqing got up in shock. Suddenly, her heart was in a mess. Somehow, there seemed to be someone talking, but it was so vague. She couldn't see clearly. She frowned and pondered. She wanted to see clearly, to think and understand, but there seemed to be a cloud of fog in front of her, covering her eyes and her heart. Her heart started to throb violently. Zi Sheqing snorted. She bent down and covered her chest. Her eyes were full of panic. She realized that her heart was in a complete mess. What's going on? All of a sudden, she remembered something. It was at this time that, for some inexplicable reason, she thought of Chu Yang. She thought of the poem that she had left behind when she left. Hidden in the high clouds in the wind, I travel alone to the ends of the world. If we meet again in the clouds, I ask you to sweep away the fallen flowers in Jiangnan. Suddenly, her heart skipped a beat. She murmured, what happened? A voice said softly, the fallen flowers are like a dream, dreams are empty, the vanity of the mortal world, the fallen flowers in dreams. Big Sister Z, take care. In her mind, Chu Yang's figure disappeared quickly. Chapter 2093. A strong ominous feeling shrouded Zi Sheqing's heart. She stood up in annoyance and paced back and forth in the courtyard. The more she thought about it, the more confused she became. She was at a loss. A young man in white suddenly rushed in. Miss Z, what happened? Zi Sheqing frowned and said, what happened in the Heaven Imperial Court during this period of time? The young man in white scratched his head and said blankly, where did it happen? I don't have any. Zi Sheqing said impatiently, then, the person I asked you to investigate last time, have you found anything? No. The young man in white was a little ashamed. But before he finished, he was kicked out by Zi Sheqing. Although Zi Sheqing's temper was a little irritable, she was usually very restrained. At this moment, for some reason, she suddenly couldn't control her anger. You can't even investigate one person, what kind of demon are you? The young man in white was confused. He was about to explain when he saw that Zi Sheqing actually ignored him. She just frowned and muttered to herself, what happened to you? What happened to you? Lower three heavens. Palace. Emperor Tai Yang suddenly looked up, his eyes filled with deep sorrow. What happened? What happened? Why? He suddenly felt that he was infinitely lonely, as if he had lost his greatest protection in this world and became an orphan without any relative. Don't abandon me. The little emperor suddenly burst into tears. In another place in the Heaven Imperial Court, no matter what the Tribulation Brothers were doing, they suddenly became orderly and solemn at this moment. Mo Tianji threw out the copper coin of destiny and hurriedly calculated. Everyone felt uneasy and missed Chu Yang immensely. What happened? Cha. Chu Yang was still walking forward coldly. His footsteps were consistent and clear, just like an ordinary person walking. His eyes were calm and his face was calm. There was no fluctuation at all. He just walked forward step by step. But the Chu Yang now was so terrifying. He was like the death god walking in the mortal world. Everywhere he passed, there was only endless silence. The tribulation sword in Chu Yang's hand was actually shining with blood. After every step, at least 7 or 8 ghost clan experts would be killed and their souls would be destroyed. Brothers, I said that I would create a legend with all of you. It's a pity that I have to leave first. You have to be well. All of you have to create your own legends. Chu Yang's ashen eyes looked forward. Now, there were only 5 people left. The 5 of them were like lambs waiting to be slaughtered. They looked at Chu Yang with fear and trembled. One of them was Yuan Shitu. Yuan Shitu was the young master of Mo Yuntian after all. Even though this incident was caused by him, as long as he was still the young master, the ghost hunter and the others had to ensure his safety first. Even if they had to exchange their lives for his safety, they had to do it. This was the sorrow of the lower position. As for the other 3, they were the ones who had gone to the Chu clan's courtyard to cause trouble. The reason why they were able to survive until now was partly because of their strength, and partly because of their status. They were the few people with the highest status in Mo Yuntian's group, and also the strongest few. However, at that moment, the 3 of them all had ashen faces, and despair flickered in their eyes. Everyone else was dead. As the main culprits, they were at least accomplices. How could they be forgiven by this killing god in front of them? However, under such heaven-suppressing might, he could not even muster the slightest thought of resisting. He could only stretch out his neck and wait for death. This kind of feeling made people go crazy. In the 3 people's desperate eyes, Chu Yang strode forward without saying a word. He raised his sword and the sword in his hand fell down. The sword light flew up. The 3 strongest experts of the ghost hunter still had no room to resist. Their heads flew up high, and blood spurted out from their necks. Such a horrible scene made the scalps of Shuexian Haibo and the other experts tingle. These 3 people are real experts, and they are definitely not inferior to me. However, these 3 people, the experts of the 3 experts, were killed without any ability to resist. Even if it was killing a chicken, there would be a struggle. However, when killing people, even this struggle process was omitted. The 300 to 400 people from the other 2 super sects who belonged to Mo Yuntian all turned pale. The thousands of people around them were all controlling themselves, and did not dare to let themselves make any sound. They did not even dare to breathe. Yuan Shu too looked at Chu Yang in horror. His whole body was shaking like an old sow sifting chaff. His heart was already filled with regret. Isn't it just a woman? Where can't I find her? Even if I can't find a pure yin body, I can find another one to replace her. Why did I have to provoke Chu Yang? I've already been killed by him once, and I still want to provoke him. I'm really looking for death, and I'm looking for death again and again. Spare me, spare me. Yuan Shu too retreated step by step in panic. He was already speaking incoherently. Other than these 3 words, he could not say anything else. Chu Yang held his sword and walked forward coldly. He was completely indifferent. The last of the 5 survivors was the black-clothed, white-bearded old man. Until now, he was still able to maintain his composure. It was obvious that his temperament was good. The old man sighed and said loudly, "Sir, we are indeed in the wrong in this matter. However, you've already killed so many people. I believe you've vented your anger. Why don't we sit down and have a good talk? If you're still dissatisfied, we're willing to compensate you. We can accept any price. We just want to appease your anger. How about that?" Chu Yang looked at him coldly. He did not respond at all and continued to walk forward. The black-clothed, white-bearded old man took a step forward and said in a deep voice, "Sir, you have to consider carefully. Once you do something, there's no turning back. Your cultivation is indeed earth-shattering, but my young master is not an ordinary person. My young master is." Before he finished speaking, he saw a sword light flashing. The black-clothed, white-bearded old man looked at the long sword in disbelief. It was like a brilliant flowing light that could catch up with time. It crossed the boundary of time and space and pierced into his heart. Chu Yang did not allow him to finish his last sentence. Blood slowly flowed out from the corner of his mouth. He looked at Chu Yang blankly and said, "You'll regret it. You'll definitely regret it." Whether the previous Chu Yang would regret it because of today's matter, this answer was uncertain. However, the current Chu Yang would definitely not regret it. Because the word regret was meaningless to him now. Chu Yang coldly held the long sword horizontally and cut open the old man's chest. With a swoosh sound, the old man's body turned into two pieces and fell to the ground. With a poof, it turned into black ashes. In front of him, there was only one Yuan Shitu. He was the last person of the Mo Yuntian ghost region. "Don't kill me." Yuan Shitu suddenly burst into tears and knelt down. "Don't kill me. I'm wrong. I won't dare to do it again." The sword light flashed. One of Yuan Shitu's arms fell down. With a scream, Chu Yang said coldly, "Snatching my woman?" This was the first time Chu Yang spoke since the start of this massacre. Yuan Shitu screamed loudly. His whole body trembled and his soul left his body. Poof! With another sword strike, Yuan Shitu's left shoulder also fell down. Chu Yang said lightly, "Rushing to my house to snatch my woman?" Yuan Shitu was already moaning and crying. He was saying something meaningless. The sword light flashed again. Both of Yuan Shitu's legs were broken at the knees. Before he could scream, Chu Yang had already pierced his crotch. He said coldly, "Even if you're dead, you're not qualified to be a man anymore." Everyone's scalp went numb as they watched, but no one dared to act rashly. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Chu Yang slowly dismembered Yuan Shu Lu bit by bit. Pieces of flesh flew out, and pieces of bones were picked out. They were picked clean, and placed on the ground one by one. But Yuan Shitu couldn't die for a while. He really couldn't die even if he wanted to. He could only howl and scream there. His mind was clear as he endured the bloodiest punishment in the world. Chu Yang stabbed his sword mechanically. At this moment, Chu Yang didn't have any specific thoughts at all. He only remembered one thing. This guy was his mortal enemy. At this point, the destructive force finally began to fade. Chu Yang also slowly felt that his body was a little weak. His mind that had completely disappeared before was also gradually recovering. His thoughts flashed through his mind, and he instantly understood the whole story. He couldn't help but laugh bitterly. He stabbed his sword into Yuan Shitu's throat. The power that he exchanged with his life was about to disappear. He couldn't let any change happen again. With a spin of the sword, Yuan Shitu's head flew up. Die. Then, the sword light flashed violently, and a bright light overflowed. Yuan Shitu's head turned into pieces in midair. His flesh and bones were all turned into powder. The killing finally came to an end. But the onlookers didn't relax at all. Chu Yang slowly turned around. His cold eyes slid across the faces of the experts who were watching the battle. No matter who he saw, that person couldn't help but turn his face away. This kind of ferocious and cruel gaze made everyone tremble in fear. In front of Chu Yang's chest, blood flowed out again from the huge wound. Chu Yang could clearly feel that his vitality and spiritual power were flowing away bit by bit. They were flowing away completely uncontrollably. He was about to leave this world again. Chu Yang smiled bitterly in his heart and thought, "This life is really much stronger than the previous one. Since I, Chu Yang, started my career, what I care about the most is my family, my women, and my brothers." Chu Yang endured the dizziness. He looked at everyone's faces with cold and sharp eyes. He held his sword horizontally in front of his chest, looking down at the heroes and the world. Blood dripped from the tribulation sword and fell to the ground. There was complete silence all around. "This is my bottom line," Chu Yang said softly. "Whoever dares to take a step forward will have the same consequences." He pointed the tip of his sword at the messy corpses in front of him. There was a pool of blood and flesh on the ground. Chu Yang smiled faintly and said indifferently, "Let's settle our grudges first. What's there to be afraid of?" Shuexian's face turned pale. Chapter 2094. Their two clans originally had an excellent opportunity to become friends with Chu Yang, but they chose to stay out of it. And now, they were being reprimanded by Chu Yang and even had to worry that he would settle scores with them. This feeling was so suffocating that it could drive one crazy. How did a pauper feel when he realized that a mountain of gold had slipped through his fingers? That was the feeling the two of them were feeling now. Not only that, they were also afraid that the mountain of gold would crush them to death at any time. Blood flowed faster and faster from the wound on Chu Yang's chest. That invincible power was also dissipating rapidly. Gradually, he couldn't hold on any longer. Chu Yang stood upright. Slowly, he felt that even his eyes were becoming a little blurry. He swayed a little and lowered the tip of his sword to support his body, not allowing himself to show any weakness. "So, I actually can't bear to die either." Chu Yang laughed bitterly in his heart. "Chu Yang tilde." A shrill cry rang out. It was Tai Butian who had finally woken up. Seeing Chu Yang just standing there, she cried out in fear. Chu Yang finally relaxed. He raised his head reluctantly. "Tian Tian." He only felt a violent wave of dizziness wash over him. He fell down as if a mountain of gold had collapsed. Tai Butian pounced over as if she didn't care about her own life. She hugged Chu Yang's weak body and said sorrowfully, "How are you?" "You. Don't scare me. Your injuries." "Heavy pill, where's the heavy pill?" Tai Butian used her hands to cover Chu Yang's wound in vain, as if trying to stop the rapid outflow of blood. However, the blood continued to gush out, dripping from the gaps between her fingers. Tai Butian burst into tears. Her hands clutched Chu Yang's chest tightly, not knowing what to do. Don't die. Don't." Her face was full of tears as she shook her head frantically. The current Tai Butian didn't have any of the demeanor of a ruler. She was just a pitiful girl who was about to lose her true love. She didn't know what to do. She was in despair and sorrow. "You're all right. That's great." Chu Yang's voice was extremely weak. But, he smiled in satisfaction. "I was afraid that I would be too late. I'm fine. Nothing must happen to you too. Absolutely nothing must happen to you. Promise me. Your medicine, hurry up and take it." Tai Butian burst into tears. "I can't do it anymore." Chu Yang smiled like a child. "I used my last move. It's a move that can take any enemy down with me. Even heavy pills won't be able to heal this injury. Tian Tian, I'm sorry. I won't be able to protect you from now on. No. Tai Butian shook her head frantically. "I need you to protect me. What I need. I will always need your protection. Don't leave me, don't be naive." Chu Yang said softly, "Tian Tian, you've always been a strong person. You must look after our family and our children." He forced his eyes open and looked at Tai Butian gently. "When you see Qianxian and Qingwu in the future, tell them to take good care of themselves." Tai Butian suddenly felt that her heart was suddenly empty. It became empty. The world around her disappeared. Only Chu Yang's words were left. Each and every one of them was like a huge hammer pounding on her heart. For a moment, she was suddenly at a loss. It was as if her body was also floating weightlessly. Actually, men should be like this in the first place. Chu Yang chuckled and looked ahead in a daze. But he could no longer see anything. Dying in order to protect is a worthy death, like a man. Don't cry. I like your smile the most." Chu Yang forced himself to reach out. There was a smile on his face, as if he wanted to wipe away the tears at the corners of Tai Butian's eyes. His fingers were getting closer and closer, but his hand was halfway there when it suddenly fell limply. The smile on his face also suddenly froze. It didn't move anymore. "Chu Yang. Tai Butian let out a heart-wrenching roar. But Chu Yang still maintained the smile on his face and didn't react anymore. Light flickered on the tip of the calamity sword, as if it was jumping. As if it was grieving. All of this indicated that the master of the calamity sword had fallen in the heavenly imperial court. Tai Butian looked on blankly. Suddenly, she smiled foolishly. Husband, the road to the Yellow Springs is long. Are you afraid to walk alone? I know you're not afraid. You've been afraid of anyone and everything in this world. But I'm really afraid to be left alone. Without you in this world, I'm really afraid. I'm afraid of everything in this world. Tai Butian said gently. She took the calamity sword from Chu Yang's hands and held it in her hands lovingly. The sharp edge of the calamity sword cut her delicate hands. Blood flowed out, but she didn't seem to feel it. She stood up slowly. She hugged Chu Yang. Chu Yang's body was huge and his legs were especially long. More than half of them hung in the crook of her arms. I, Tai Butian, was once the leader of the world. But I'm still a woman with a husband. Tai Butian's expression was perplexed but firm. I have my own husband. No matter where he is, whether he's dead or alive, I'll accompany him. How can I let him walk alone in the Yellow Springs? A wife treats her husband as her sky. When my husband dies, my sky will collapse. Tai Butian smiled miserably. Since the sky has collapsed, what's the point of living? What's the point of dying? Husband, I can't care about others and I don't want to care. But I'm really afraid. Please take me with you. Tai Butian smiled miserably. She raised the calamity sword and stabbed it into her own heart without hesitation. Life and death follow you. The calamity sword suddenly flickered with a dazzling light. Thick blood gushed out from Tai Butian's chest. Much of it flowed into the wound in Chu Yang's heart and merged into one. Tai Butian held the calamity sword with both hands and stabbed it into her own chest. She hugged Chu Yang and slowly sat down on the ground. She gently placed Chu Yang's body on top of her, afraid that it would hurt him. Let's go together. Let's go together and never be separated. Tai Butian grabbed her unfathomable phantasm jade and crushed it with a loud smack. The ordinary-looking woman on the stage immediately disappeared and was replaced by a peerless beauty who could topple countries. Tai Butian smiled sweetly. When did my husband become so proud? It's too embarrassing for him to accompany him with such a face. At this moment, I'm showing my true face to the world to accompany him to the netherworld. She lowered her head slowly and looked at Chu Yang's face affectionately. She said lovingly, let's go together. Her body trembled slightly and suddenly stopped moving. The Emperor of Iron Cloud was going to walk with her lover. Everyone around was so shocked that they were speechless when they saw this soul-stirring scene. Yun Tian bit his lip and watched Tai Butian commit suicide. A hint of regret and guilt flashed across his eyes. Then, he secretly exhaled. Chu Yang's sword technique was indeed a forbidden technique that would end in mutual destruction. This terrifying enemy of his was finally dead, but, did he die in his own scheme? The others also had different expressions and emotions. When Chu Yang used his heart's blood to destroy all tribulations, the sword spirit was completely useless. At this moment, the sword spirit was in the tribulation space with a resolute face. If that's the case, if the tribulation sword master can't break through the heavenly tribulation, do I have to start all over again and serve another mediocre tribulation sword master? After Chu Yang, who else in this world can be worthy of my attention? Moreover, this is my brother. He saw me as a brother and treated me with sincerity. Now that he's dead, how can I just disappear with the tribulation sword? Wait for the next reincarnation? Forget it, I'll go with you. The sword spirit lay down slowly and gathered his nirvana divine fire in the depths of his soul. He was just waiting for the tribulation sword master to die and the tribulation space to collapse. Then, he would also disappear. He wouldn't stay in this world anymore. The sword spirit sneered. If such a person can't do it, who else can? I won't serve you anymore. I've lived for so many years with my brother. I've had enough. In the tribulation sword, the shadow tore his hair anxiously. How can this be? How can this be? How can this be? If he came out first, Chu Yang wouldn't have died. But after Chu Yang used his heart's blood to destroy all tribulations, even if he came out, it would be too late. It would be useless. Using my heart's blood to destroy all tribulations was an irreversible ultimate forbidden technique. If it wasn't for the high price, which required the exchange of all life, how could the person who used this technique have such unimaginable and terrifying power? Even if he came out, he couldn't change the fact that all tribulations were destroyed. At least, he didn't have the ability to do so. According to his knowledge, there were only 2 people in the entire universe and the chaotic sky that were capable of turning such a situation around. But those 2 people weren't here now. In other words, Chu Yang was dead. In the distant starry sky, on a blue planet, a white-clothed young man who was fishing by the sea seemed to have noticed something. His gaze passed through the endless space and he muttered to himself, "You are also like this. Not bad, not bad." Beside him, a beautiful woman who didn't seem to be from this world asked suspiciously, "What's wrong?" "Nothing. Continue fishing, haha." The white-clothed young man smiled and moved the fishing rod in his hand. He couldn't help but laugh. A big fish has taken the bait. The beautiful woman beside him couldn't help but roll her eyes. With your cultivation, if you want to catch fish, you don't even need to blow. At most, you just need to glare, and all the fish in the sea will float up with their bellies facing up. But now, you're actually fishing here slowly, and you're so excited after catching a fish. Who are you trying to fool? Only a ghost would believe you. The beautiful woman rolled her eyes and wrinkled her delicate little nose. She snorted and turned away. This flirtatious way of rolling her eyes made the white-clothed young man stunned. He looked at her lecherously. The fishing rod in his hand slipped out of his hand and was dragged away by the fish in the sea. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.